All right, welcome to the 54th edition of Before the Battle. My name is Nick Baldwin, and joining me for the first time here on the program is a writer for MMAfighting.com. You know him. He is Jed Meshew. Jed, how's it going?
That's good. How about you, Nick?
I am doing good. Really appreciate you coming on. Second time I've done a podcast with you. First time here on Before the Battle, and second time it has been super short notice. Literally an hour ago, I had no idea I'd be talking to you, and here we are. So I appreciate you stepping up on literally just half an hour ago.
No problem. Happy to do it. After we did Risen together, might as well just make this a habit.
Yeah, I mean that was interesting. That was very interesting. I am a bit more awake now than I was then. It is not 4 or 5 a.m. here. It is only 10 where I am, 11 where you are. So I'm awake and I'm ready to go. So that's good.
That's an improvement. Always good to improve.
Of course, improvement is key. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that Risen show. If you listened, I kind of don't think many people listened to it. It was 6 hours of us lying on the couch watching Japanese MMA half asleep.
There's another one coming up, Nick. Just saying.
I know. I will actually be on vacation, so if I wasn't going to be, I would totally be doing it. I would be down and we would be doing the same thing over again, but it's looking like it's a no for this time.
Fine, I'll get somebody else to do it with me.
Yes, anyone as insane. I'm not sure if you'll be able to find someone, but good luck with that. Now, let's get into this weekend's fights. We have 2 cards to go through, so we're going to go through both of them relatively briefly, more so than usual, perhaps, especially the first card, UFC Fight Night 102, because it's just not that good of a card. Let's be honest. Derek Lewis and Shamil Abdurakhimov is the main event, and that's not that good of a main event, because Shamil Abdurakhimov should not be in a main event of a UFC card, but he is.
Derek Lewis. Look, I love Derek Lewis. I love that man. He is not a main event fighter yet. He may well get there one day, but this should not be it. And I think everybody knows that.
I think if they wanted to put the Black Beast in the main event, they should have gone with someone like Travis Brown even, or someone around that caliber.
I mean, I think he should have gotten that fight just for him, and he's done some interviews lately that have suggested he is a little unhappy with the circumstances that he's had to kind of take this fight with a guy that's lower than him. But he also, I mean, this could just be fighter talk, fair credence, but he also said that the UFC told him that nobody was really willing to accept a fight with him, and so he was just kind of stuck taking the Abdurakhimov fight. So
I mean, who would fight the Black Beast if we're being honest? Maybe Francis Ngannou, maybe Stipe, and probably that's it.
I mean, I feel like fighting him doesn't offer a lot of rewards, even though I think he is a very beatable fighter. But you're not accomplishing a lot going forward if you're Junior Dos Santos doesn't need a fight with him. Alistair Overeem. Maybe Overeem fights him coming off that loss. Not if he beats Abdurakhimov here, because theoretically he'll move up a little more. Overeem's coming off a loss, maybe, but it's definitely not an enticing fight if you're a heavyweight that's higher ranked than he is.
No, and I still think like Derek Lewis has a big ceiling, which is kind of the biggest asterisk on him just in general, because I feel like we've already seen him lose and he's kind of on a roll right now, but I still think that he hasn't improved enough over the past year or two to kind of go past that cap that he's already put on himself.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm okay with him taking a slow progression, I guess.
Of course. The Travis Brown fight, maybe as far as the stylistic matchup goes, that'd be a lot better. But you can't really necessarily blame Lewis if that's kind of the route he wants to take, going up slowly, and that's what he's been doing. After a couple losses, it sort of makes sense, because we saw what happened when he fought guys like Mitrione and Sean Jordan. He got knocked out. So
this is true. I mean, yeah, I still don't know how much I'd favor him in a fight with Travis Brown. He's kind of, until he shows a little bit more progression, I think 10 is he's kind of right in his perfect zone. It is unfortunate that he's had to, I think Abdurakhimov is 15th. I think he's ranked 15 now. I'm not sure if he was ranked 15 when this fight was announced, or if it was one of those things where like
We always see
they kind of twist some things,
yes,
make it come for the rankings to be a little bit better of a look.
yes, of course. Whenever we see these lower title contenders, like guys that fight for the title, like number 5, number 6, Cody Garbrandt, for example, this weekend, they always seem over the course of the couple months before the fight, they always seem to bump up 1 or 2 spots. So instead of champion versus number 5, it's champion versus number 2 or 3, and it apparently looks a lot better. I don't really buy that though.
I mean,
but it's true. It's
I guess
true.
It looks better in like the most naked, ridiculous sense of it. The thing about this fight card that is
yes, because champions and number 1 contenders are always the best in MMA. They're no one below them will beat them.
Exactly. I don't know. The thing about this fight card that stuck out to me was whenever the fight got announced, and on Twitter, Derek Lewis is a social media all-star, by the way. If you're not in the loop yet, follow the man on Twitter. He's fantastic. And when the fight was announced, he posted on Twitter something, I'm paraphrasing here, something along the lines of, I'm fighting Shamil Abda. Who the hell is that guy? I don't know. I can't even pronounce his name. Right. I didn't know he existed.
Yes, I believe he pulled the Conor McGregor. Who the fuck is that guy as well?
He may well have done that.
It would make
sense. That pretty much speaks kind of volumes about this. Shamil Abdurakhimov is one. I mean,
he's a classic heavyweight fighter.
He is a UFC creative fighter. Like, he's just there.
He's there, and he does everything mildly okay, but nothing great.
He can fight a little bit,
and that's okay. I mean, not everybody has to be the best of the best or the cream of the crop, but probably should be made
fight a little bit. Like, and a heavyweight, being a tough dude that can fight a little bit will get you pretty far, honestly. Like, I think his only loss in the UFC is to Tim Johnson. Tim Johnson's also a tough dude who can fight a little bit.
And he's there.
Yep, and he's there. Also, I'm now pretty certain that when this fight was announced, Abdurakhimov was unranked at the time, because I actually know for a fact that Tim Johnson was ranked 15th.
Yes, but Volkov beat him.
Yeah, but then Tim Johnson lost to Alexander Volkov, who moved up to 13, because I'm looking at the rankings right now. Johnson dropped all the way off, and Abdurakhimov supplanted him. So, UFC rankings are nonsense anyway. But
yes, UFC rankings are fantastic. Of course, Abdurakhimov, who lost to Tim Johnson a year ago maybe, is of course ahead of him. All the sense in the world. Okay, let's dive into this card that, again, I don't have a whole lot to talk about. You don't have a whole lot to talk about, but we're going to go through most of the fights anyways. We'll skip the first 2 cards. Sorry, guys. But we'll start out with the returning Frankie Perez, who's coming off that knockout win over Sam Stout over a year ago. He retired at that card, UFC Fight Night Saskatoon. I was there. He had the retirement speech and whatnot after picking up the biggest win of his career. He stepped away, and now he's back just over a year later, and he's taking on a top prospect, Mark Diakese, the Bone Crusher. Pretty interesting lightweight matchup. It'll be interesting to see how Perez looks coming off this layoff and coming out of retirement. Will he be fired up? Is he ready to go? We will see. How do you see this one playing out against Mark Diakese?
This is an interesting fight because, like you said, Perez is kind of coming off that sort of weird transitory period in his career, and Mark Diakese, honestly, I think it's Diakese. But Mark Diakese is he is a top shelf prospect. He made his UFC debut earlier this year against Lucas Sajewski, and ended up in a much tougher fight than I think he thought, or than I think people kind of thought was foretold for him, because he was. I mean, what's the language protocol on this? Just a question for you.
What?
Because he he was a hot shit prospect coming into the bout. Like, coming into the UFC, he had put together a bunch of really impressive wins at Bama. He is, a super athletic guy and a young man who's going to do big things and is, by all accounts, likely to end up being a top 10 fighter sooner rather than later. But he kind of ended up having some struggles there. And I in some ways, I think maybe that's the same thing that happens here. But in the end, you just kind of have to back Diakiese here. He is a Ferrari engine with an amateur driver behind the wheel. He just hasn't put all the pieces together yet, but his takedown game is authoritative. He shoots incredibly quickly and just powers through on finishes. He's he's a flashy striker, sometimes to his detriment. He does things that are cooler to look at more than fundamentals, but he's still getting there. It's really just about that he is so raw, and we're going to see, and he's going to take time to develop, and that's fine. He's a prospect; he'll do that. I do think, I think Frankie Perez can grapple, and if Frankie Perez can end up on top, maybe there's something there. Maybe we can see how Diakiese does. If he gets dragged out a little bit more, has to kind of work harder. Ultimately, I think, I favor the young prospect over the not.
Yeah, I tend to agree here. I, like you, wasn't as impressed as I kind of thought going into the fight with Diakiese in his debut against Sajewski as perhaps I could have been and should have been, maybe even, because he did have a bit of struggles early on with the takedowns and whatnot from Sajewski. I believe he did get taken down at least once in that fight. I could be totally wrong, but I believe he did get taken down. Perhaps has to work on his takedown defense. Of course, he is a flashy striker. He does have power on the feet, and it's hard to pick a guy like Frankie Perez because, one, I just don't think he's that great of a fighter, and two, he's coming off a year-long layoff. Is he ready to go? I assume, I would hope so, because he's about to step inside the cage with another professional fighter. But coming off the layoff, will there be ring rust? Probably not for sure, but it seems more likely than not. Usually happens in some form or another, and don't think he's at the level to beat a guy like the prospect in Mark Diakiese. I'm going to go Diakiese to keep him on the feet, but Perez doesn't have a terrible ground game by any means. So if he does utilize his takedowns in this fight and gets it down to the ground, he could make it into a close fight and an interesting one as well, and could pull this one off. But I still do think Diakiese will be able to keep Perez off of him for the most part. And even if he does get taken down, I do think he'll end up making his way back to his feet like he did in his debut, and eventually catch Perez and defeat him by knockout. Next up, we got Andrew Sanchez, the TUF 23 winner, taking on Trevor Smith. It's a middleweight matchup, Hot Sauce versus El Dirte. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
I have next to no thoughts on this one. Like you said at the beginning, I came in unprepared, and I have done most of my research for UFC 206, but after we hang up on this call and do this is when I will be preparing for my piece talking about this card tomorrow morning. So off the top
I wish you luck.
Yeah, I know, right? It's going to be a long night. Off the top of my head, I would favor Andrew Sanchez. El Dirte. Is it El Dirte? Is that? Am I right there?
Yeah, El Dirte.
It is El
That's
Dirte.
what
Yeah,
UFC
I thought so. Wasn't
says.
Wasn't
Yes.
100% sure if that was right. I think he's just kind of a better fighter in general. I don't, and frankly, I'll be honest, a lot of that's based on the fact that I can't super think of something that really sticks out to me about Trevor Smith off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I know that he's been around the UFC kind of for a little bit. But nothing jumps out at me about that. And if you've been around the UFC for a while and you're not sticking out, whereas I can recall Andrew Sanchez's fight with Khalil Roundtree.
Wasn't a good one, but it was
No, but
you could
Khalil
really.
Gentry's, not a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination. And he's going to be a bigger man coming in here. So he's far younger. Give me Andrew Sanchez, and the odds would agree with me on that too. So that makes me feel good. But yeah, that's all I got. What about you?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. My pick is Andrew Sanchez. I think the odds are where they should be. Trevor Smith, I think you kind of, even though you didn't really provide a whole lot of analysis, I feel like you hit the nail on the head in the sense that nothing has really jumped out because you think of Trevor Smith, I have to go back and see what has this guy done as of late. And yes, he is actually riding a couple fight winning streak, coming off 2 wins in a row over Dan Miller and Joe Gigliotti. But I mean, 2 grinding fights that really just aren't memorable whatsoever. Both guys are gritty, both guys are tough, but I think Andrew Sanchez just more athletic, and I think he'll be able to grind out his fellow sort of grinders, so to speak. Both guys like to get on top and use ground and pound, and both have okay submissions as well. Sanchez a bit more of a ground and pounder, and Smith a bit more known for submissions. But I do think it'll be Andrew Sanchez getting the win. I think he'll stay on top for the majority of the fight and probably pick up a fairly clear unanimous decision win. Now, next up, we got Joe Gigliotti making his return to the cage after a loss in his debut to Trevor Smith, who we just talked about. So that tells you something about Joe Gigliotti. He's taking on newcomer Gerald Meerschaert. What are your thoughts on this one, and do you have a pick?
I'm actually a little bit torn on this, mainly because, I mean, not to sound like sort of the worst human being in the world, but considering we just broke down Trevor Smith by essentially saying, like, yeah, so there's that about him. And then Joe Gigliotti, took a loss to Trevor Smith in his debut. Lost a decision. He was expected to win. And the other thing here that really kind of sticks out to me is the size. There's a pretty clear size disadvantage here. Meerschaert. I honestly, I'm really bad at names. Sorry for all you listeners. Meerschaert has an enormous length advantage here. He's only a couple inches taller, but he's got 8 inches of reach, and he's a southpaw. And that's a pretty big advantage to take into any fight, even at the very top levels, but specifically in the sort of middle levels where like little tiny advantages like that can spread themselves out much further and kind of create a much bigger gap to overcome. Gigliotti is going to have a hard time working around that sort of length disadvantage, and he's not the most active guy on the feet. So I find it hard to think that he's going to kind of be able to navigate that in a constructive manner. And so I'm going to pick Meerschaert. He's done a pretty good job in the regional circuit. He was on a lot of Titan FC fights, and I'm excited to kind of see what he can do when he gets here. I'm always a little bit concerned about fighters making their UFC debut, as we'll talk about, I think, in the next fight. But
And the fight after, and the fight after, and the fight after.
yeah, I mean, there's actually a ton of debuts this weekend, aren't there? But yeah, I don't think that this is a huge step up in talent level of competition here, so I'm picking Meerschaert. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going Gerald Meerschaert here as well. Joe Gigliotti lost to a guy fairly convincingly. Lost fairly convincingly to a guy we just talked about as a guy who didn't stand out really to us whatsoever. So, as I said off the top, that kind of says something about Joe Gigliotti. I expect him to do a bit better against Trevor Smith, and Smith was able to get on top of him for 2 of 3 rounds. And get the unanimous decision win. I don't see anything from Joe Gigliotti that really makes me think he can beat a guy like Gerald Meerschaert in most of the UFC middleweight roster. I think GM3 is just, as you said, I think the size advantage here, of course, particularly the reach, could be key. Meerschaert likes to get inside, so maybe the reach won't be as key as if it was for a guy really known for his boxing and kicks and striking. But still, I do think Meerschaert could use that to his advantage if he wants to and stay on the outside. Gigliotti likes to get on top of you and get the clinch as well. So if Meerschaert stays outside, he could just pick apart Gigliotti for 3 rounds and win a decision. Or I honestly think because he's going to be a way stronger guy, I think anyways, I think he could get on top as well and kind of just ride out the. I think Gerald Meerschaert wins this fight all day. Can't be super confident because he is making his debut, and sometimes debuts, you look at some guys have undefeated records and you think they're all great, and then they end up not being that good of fighters. But Meerschaert has a lot of experience. He's a younger guy, or he is actually young considering he has 32 professional fights. So that's a lot for only, I believe, 28 years old, maybe even 26. So again, I think Meerschaert, the experience could come into play here, but I got to go Gerald Meerschaert by decision. He may actually pull it off by submission as well. He could get the finish, but I'll go unanimous decision for Gerald Meerschaert. Next up, we got the debut of Chris Camozzi's little brother, Brian Camozzi. This fight is at a welterweight. He's taking on, looking for a fight, veteran Randy Rude Boy Brown. Who do you like here, Camozzi or Randy Brown?
This fight I'm actually pretty interested in, to be fair. Randy Brown is a really good athlete, and in his last fight with Eric Montano, he kind of surprised me, honestly. Sort of the book on him coming into that was that he is a really great athlete and almost purely a striker, that was kind of the bread and butter of his game. And that he's not like a tremendous wrestler really or grappler. And I think going into that fight, I might have even picked Eric Montano to have, to not win, but to have a far better than average chance against, being able to exploit some of the holes in Brown's game. But Brown showed a lot of improvement. He's also just enormous for the division. He's 6'3" as a welterweight. He's got 78 inches of reach. But one of the things that interests me here is that Brian Camozzi can match that, that sort of athleticism and that size. He's also really big for the division. I think ultimately, if we could use our predictive powers here a little bit and go to the future, I think Brian Camozzi's career probably ends up being, I don't know, I want to say that he ends up having like a better career than his brother, with the exception being that he is at welterweight, which is a much more difficult division for you to excel in the ways that Chris Camozzi has. And because he's making his UFC debut, I'm going to pick Randy Brown. He's been in there a couple of times. He's only lost to Mike Graves. Mike Graves is a good fighter. And so I'm going to pick Randy Brown to let's say get a late stoppage in what could end up being a really fun fight.
Yeah, I like this too. You say that welterweight's a bit more difficult to kind of get your start in and go through the ranks. I totally agree. Of course, compared to middleweight, although Jacare Souza is not at welterweight, and Jacare is of course the Camozzi killer. So Brian, the little brother, doesn't have that hurdle to overcome. So there's that.
It's true. It's a true statement.
I provide a lot of true statements here on the program and a lot of not true. So you pick and choose. Randy Brown, Brian Camozzi. This is actually one of those fights I'm actually really looking forward to. I think it could be one of the better contested fights on this card, so to speak. Randy Brown, of course, as you stated earlier, he of course showed off his submission game in his last fight. Got that quick submission, I believe, in the third round over Eric Montano. So he has a submission game. We can say that. Brian Camozzi, of course, a bit more well-rounded. Randy Brown, the striker, of course, out of the two. I think Camozzi has the grappling advantage, despite Brown coming off the submission win. I think Brown, of course, has the power and the overall striking on the feet precision and as I said, power on the feet. Brown, as you said as well, likes to use his size to his advantage, but again, as you said, that's not really something he'll be able to use because Camozzi is just as big, essentially just 1 inch deficit for Camozzi in height, and then reach is
virtually identical is the word you're looking.
Yeah, that is. And they're from Jed Meshew. I like it. So the reach is the same. So Randy Brown not going to have that size advantage he's had in previous UFC fights. Could that come into play? I don't know. Maybe. Brian Camozzi, I think, will be able to get inside Randy Brown. How do you beat him? You take him down and you grind him out, and you don't let him guillotine you off his back. Barring anything like that happening again, I think Brian Camozzi can grind this one out, pick up a win in his debut. Again, a little cautious that it is his debut just because some debutantes, some are better than others, of course. I think Camozzi is one of the better ones we've seen in a little while, but you never know because Randy Brown, of course, is a step up in competition. This isn't exactly a step up for Brown. It could be. We'll see, but kind of wrapping things up, I do think Brian Camozzi gets the win here. Maybe by submission late in the fight. I don't think it'll be a quick fight. I think it'll go to at least the second, maybe even the third round, where Camozzi could pick up a submission over perhaps a slightly tired Randy Brown, or he'll just grind this one out for a unanimous decision. Next up, kicking off the UFC Fight Pass main card, you got number 14, light heavyweight Jean Vellante taking on yet another newcomer, Saparbeck Safarov. Jed, who do you like here?
Oh man, we just jumped right over the Kishioda fight. Not that I'm
that was super sad.
Not that I'm super sad that we're jumping over the Kishioda fight. Let me just say, but this is one of those things where I will freely admit I have not a dang clue about Saparbeck Safarov. I know that, as you astutely pointed out, he looks like a Russian Johnny Hendricks. And if he fights like Johnny Hendricks, then Jean Vellante might be in a whole world of trouble here.
Or if it's 2016, quickly, if it's 2016 Johnny Hendricks, maybe Jean Vellante pulled this one off.
I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but like, if you matched up Johnny Hendricks versus Jean Vellante right now, I would probably pick Johnny Hendricks. I mean, he's given up I would say he's given up a lot of weight, but Johnny Hendricks blew weight last time, so he's not giving up that much weight, honestly. And light heavyweight's real bad. You could totally convince me that Johnny Hendricks could be Jean Vellante straight up.
I don't know. But we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, looking over
the break on the Risen podcast.
Yes, looking over the Saparbeck's. Man, that name is going to be a struggle for whoever's calling that fight card this weekend. He has, he's an M1 Global fighter, essentially, and put together a nice set of wins there against mostly nobody. He did beat Rodney Wallace, who's not a bad fighter in his last fight before getting here. Jean Vellante, pretty well known. He's Chris Weidman's running mate, essentially. Coming off the loss to Lear Latifi, when was that? Earlier this year, March.
Yes.
Pretty kind of middle of the road light heavyweight. Not bad at it. Not bad at anything. Just kind of wants to get in there and have sort of a scrap. He's a middleweight in the light heavyweight body, essentially. Considering I don't know anything about Safarov, I got to pick Jean Vellante here just to kind of do his thing against a commodity that I know literally nothing about, because in the dark, Jean Vellante is better than your average fighter, and that's all I can assume Saparbeck is. But, the Russians turn out a pretty good set of fighters, so it's very possible. But it doesn't appear to me that he has the same kind of Sambo background that a lot of the Dagestani fighters coming out have. I could totally be wrong on that. I'm just not seeing anything about it. And so if that's the case, I feel good picking Jean Vellante here against random guy. His losses have mostly come to very good fighters. He got knocked out by Tom Lawler. little bit questionable. But Ali Latifi's a top 10 light heavyweight. So I'm willing to pick Jean Vellante here.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't know anything about Saparbek Safarov, and that includes knowing how to pronounce his name correctly. Jean Vellante, as you said, a mid-tier light heavyweight. He does everything okay, more so the striking than on the ground, but he doesn't do anything fantastic by any means. More often than not, I feel like when we have a kind of middle of the pack fighter, no matter the weight class, versus a no-name unknown, it seems like that no-name unknown more often than not wins, and I usually pick against them just because I don't know enough about them. So could this be the case here? It could be. And I feel like the Russian background, a lot of people will see that and say, oh, Safarov is Russian, so I'm instantly picking him against a guy like Jean Vellante, who's not a world beater by any means. But then again, some Russians are absolutely fantastic. Look at Khabib and many others, and some guys just don't really make it that far. Look at the guy in the main event, and maybe I shouldn't say he's made it that far because he has made it to a UFC main event. But as we said off the top, he probably shouldn't be there. So it's kind of tough to say what we're going to see from Safarov, but he seems he's 8-0. So again, is the experience there? No. Is the competition level there? Probably in favor of Jean Vellante. As you said, he did fight Rodney Wallace. So I guess that is something on his record, to say the least. Jean Vellante, I mean, I think you got to pick him here. Maybe Safarov surprises us. He could. I wouldn't be shocked, but I will go Jean Vellante and probably inside the distance because he does hit it hard, and it is at 205 pounds. So yeah, give me Jean Vellante here by second round TKO. Next up, we got a really interesting light heavyweight matchup that's either going to be a really fun fight or quite the snoozer. We got Corey Beeston 25-8.
He's not. He is not Beeston 25-8 anymore.
Really?
He tweeted about it, I think last night or yesterday, that is going to be the name of his brand, but that fight name is retired, and that we are all supposed to. He will announce it. We'll all find out the new name come fight time. So whenever his music hits the thing, and there's the graphic will go up saying Corey Beeston 366 or whatever it's going to be, but apparently 25-8 has been retired.
Okay, let's do the math on this. So it's going to be 50-16. Beeston 50-16. Corey Anderson taking on Sean the Real OC O'Connell. Corey Anderson is beasting for 25 more hours than usual in this fight ahead of this one. His training camp has been going awesome. He's on a lack of sleep, so that could come into play on this one. The Real OC, he's pretty real. Corey Anderson or Sean O'Connell. Jesus Christ, just give me a pick so I can stop talking.
This is an interesting fight because it's between two guys that we actually know. Like that's something different for this fight.
That's the first here. That's the first tonight.
But both of these fighters have been around the UFC for kind of a little bit here. They've put together many wins. And that being said, I'm going to pick Corey Anderson. Not that Sean O'Connell can't win, but one, I was always a person who loved Beaston 25-8. I think that's a wonderful nickname, and I don't care who knows it. But two, he's considerably younger here, and I usually favor youth in a lot of ways. He's also got a significant size advantage here. He's a pretty big light heavyweight. And he's also he's on a good run of that. His run in his career is that thing where you start to see he's putting the pieces together, and this is what he's going to be like. This is who he is as a fighter. His last fight with Mauricio Shogun Rua was a split decision loss. Very close and controversial split decision. A lot of people thought that Shogun was kind of just getting a little bit of that legend home cooking, for what he previously accomplished in his life. And that doesn't speak a lot to Corey Anderson in general because Shogun is so faded from the heights that he once reached, but it is still he made a good accounting for himself against a guy who is an historically great fighter. Got a win over Jan Blachowicz, who is a very good fighter and has, been improving steadily as well. The things that give me pause here are that he's had a couple of unenthusing performances. Really, really, I'm talking about getting knocked out by Jean Vellante isn't like a terrible thing, but we just spoke about him last fight, and it's not the hallmark of something you want to see. But that being said, Sean O'Connell is just kind of going in the opposite direction here. Whereas Corey Anderson's been making steady improvements. Sean O'Connell's last win was a year and a half ago against Anthony Peroche, who is now retired and just was 40 years old and on the end of it. And then he got knocked out by Alil Latifi. No real shame in that because Alil Latifi hits very hard and is a very good light heavyweight. He did lose a unanimous decision to Steve Bossé, and there's a personal spot in my heart for Steve Bossé because it's endlessly funny to me that he was a former hockey enforcer, that this then jumped to MMA because that's a funny transition for me to be like, oh yeah, I used to sort of fight people on skates. I'll go fight people in a cage. Why not? But Corey Anderson would not lose to Steve Bossé. And that's, MMA math isn't the thing that super works, but I'm going to take Corey Anderson here. I think the size difference, I think the skill difference, the youth, athleticism, Sean O'Connell's activity, he's a pretty bitty fighter, especially for the division. And that can do a lot of things. When we get to my homie Nikita Krylov, we can talk all about how volume wins you a lot of fans and a lot of fights. But Sean O'Connell throws a little bit more than Corey Anderson, but he's also just way worse defensively. So I'm going to pick Corey Anderson. I think he's going to get it done, probably with a late stoppage. Puts on. And you know what? I'm actually just going to say decision. I'm just going to say Corey Anderson by decision.
Yeah, because Sean O'Connell is super tough.
Yeah,
and
he's a very durable dude.
It's tough to knock him out. Of course, Alil Latifi did, but he's also the greatest.
Corey Anderson isn't swinging the hammers that Alil Latifi is,
Of course. Now that I know that Corey Anderson's nickname is no longer Beastin25-8, one, I don't know what to do with my life. Two, I don't know who to pick, because if you go back and listen to this show or my other show or any show that I break down a Corey Anderson fight on, all I literally say is, well, Corey Anderson beats 25-8. His opponent does not, so Corey Anderson will win. And more often than not, it works. So now I don't know what to do. Do I assume
80% of the time it has worked?
Yeah, I mean it's better than nothing. So now do I assume he's beating 50-16? I like Corey Anderson in all seriousness in this fight, so I will hope his new nickname is Beastin 50-16. And for that reason, he's beasting more so than Sean O'Connell, even more now. He was already beasting more than Sean O'Connell, but now he's beasting like double. So I think my confidence just raised double on Corey Anderson. In all seriousness, Corey Anderson will be able to pick apart Sean O'Connell on the feet, and he will be able to dominate Sean O'Connell on the ground. I think he can win in both areas of the game. O'Connell, of course, has the power advantage. Anderson not necessarily known for his knockout power, but he does have the more accurate striking and a bit not more active on the feet, but he just seems to if he has any sort of defense, and he does, I think he'll be able to avoid the majority of the real C shots. Sean O'Connell, very powerful, but not necessarily precise and a bit wild, and he leaves himself open. And he's just a scrappy fighter. So if he lands, you're probably going to go out, especially Corey Anderson, who has been knocked out in the UFC before. But if he doesn't land, it's going to be a long, long night for Sean O'Connell. I don't think he will land a hard enough punch to put the lights out of Beastin 50-16. Corey Anderson, as I said, too accurate on the feet, has a bit more on the feet as well, a bit more in the toolbox. He likes his kicks as well. And, of course, he's a wrestler. So I think he can definitely grind out Sean O'Connell on the mat. I think that's probably his best path to victory just because it takes away the threat of the knockout from O'Connell. So I think Corey Anderson either way will get the win. It just kind of comes down to whether it's on the feet or the mat. I think both. I think early on it'll probably be on the feet, and eventually he does get it down to the ground. Give me Corey Anderson, Beastin 50-16. I like the new nickname. I wish he kept 50.
Did I lose you?
55.
No, I'm back.
20. Okay. Corey Anderson by unanimous decision is my pick. Next up, we got the co-main event of the evening. Let's make this one quick. Francis Ngannou, the Predator, taking on Anthony Freight Train Hamilton. The biggest favorite on the card, Francis Ngannou, probably gets this done, and probably quickly and probably violently.
I honestly don't know that he's going to get it done quickly per se, because Anthony Hamilton he's a pretty durable guy. He's fighting out of Jackson Wink, which is a good camp, which will kind of I expect Jackson Wink fighters to come in with a plan to sort of stop the A game, the first threat of offense. And Francis Ngannou is. The thing about him, he's sneakily not a fast worker. He is a violent worker, make no doubt about it. But he because he kind of manages his volume to manage his cardio in a lot of ways and to stay a threat at all points in time, he's not the most active and he's not going to force the issue. But yeah, I think he's bringing a howitzer, and Hamilton is not bringing that type of heat on the feet. He's way more athletic in general. He's a better kind of craftier striker. He's going to be able to sort of piece Hamilton up. Hamilton's tough enough to last in there for a while, but I do sort of think he's going to get a knockout in, let's call it late second round.
And anybody picking Anthony Hamilton is probably closely related to him, training partner of him, or I don't know. Maybe probably that's it. The Predator will get this one done. If he doesn't, I would be shocked. This guy is a lot more powerful on the feet. He's a lot better on the feet just in general. He's better everywhere, pretty much, and he's more athletic. And I believe he's younger. If I was to look at the ages, maybe not, but I want to say yes. I'm not sure. He's taking less damage as well, so that's always there. But, I don't need to say anymore. Francis Ngannou will knock out Anthony Hamilton. It will happen. If it doesn't, I will weird live on this show. I don't know what, but if Anthony Hamilton wins, all the props go out to him, but he's not going to, so I'm pretty safe with that. Francis Ngannou, the Predator, first or second round knockout. I'd be shocked if it goes into deep waters, the third round. He doesn't always win in the first round, Ngannou. He has gone to the second once or twice in his UFC tenure. So give me Francis Ngannou. Actually, the hell with it. Give me Francis Ngannou by first round knockout. What was that?
I think Ngannou's only got one first round finish in the UFC.
Yeah, because the Curtis Blades fight, I do recall going to the second for sure.
Blades was busted up, and there was an argument that fight could have been stopped in the first. But yeah, I think he's got one. I think his last fight.
That's right.
Was a first rounder. And so maybe he's just getting better, and that's why.
Yeah. And the one before that was his name is on the tip of my tongue. That the guy that just beat Christian Colombo. I don't know, but that was in the second round. I remember. Anyways, main event time. Derek the Black Beast Lewis taking on Shamil Abdurakhimov. Are you going with Derek Lewis or Shamil Abdurakhimov?
Well, let's be very clear. Derek Lewis is the heavyweight champion of my heart, whether he's the actual heavyweight champion of the world or not. Is another thing coming. But he is a delight on social media, and so that alone makes me want to root for him. But I think he's got a lot of just sort of natural advantages in this fight in general. most particularly, he is going to be coming in with a pretty significant size advantage, both weight wise and I think he's got like 4 or 5 inches of reach. Let me look on the fight. He's got 3 inches of reach, so not as big as I originally thought it was. But he's Derek Lewis is Derek Lewis. Like everybody knows what's coming with Derek Lewis. He's not bringing some new heat that we're not prepared for. He's going to throw hammers, and kind of defend a takedown, punch you in the head a lot. Hope you don't get him down and keep him down. And he has been pretty successful doing that in his career, especially in the UFC. He faced a little bit of trouble early on in his UFC career. Matt Mitrione kind of jawed him up on the feet. Matt Mitrione is bringing a different type of athleticism to the fight than Shamil Abdurakhimov will bring. And then Sean Jordan. Yeah, exactly. Sean Jordan, the same. Like both of these guys are, former American football players that are, big men but surprisingly light on their feet, and had a quickness advantage. And I think that maybe Abdurakhimov will have a bit of a quickness advantage, but I don't really know that he's got what it takes to be here. He's a pretty durable guy. He's actually a good striker. He's not super technical, but he is a bit technical. But he kind of throws looping shots. He's not much a straight puncher. He's throws them a little wider. And he's got a good clinch game, and maybe he can kind of grind it out in the clinch where Derek Lewis is not like the best fighter there. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I'm never going to bet against the Black Beast. His win, granted a close fight against Roy Nelson, close. I think that it kind of impressed me because it showed that he is really making, he's stepping up every time. He's improving. He's constantly getting better. I like his power to land on the chin at some point. And, Abdurakhimov is tough. I don't think it matters if Derek Lewis is hitting you clean, you're probably going to sleep. I think
unless you're Roy Nelson, pretty much.
I mean, Roy Nelson has a legendary beard, so
yes, it's not the chin, it's the beard.
Well, yes, I meant beard in the metaphoric sense, but yes.
Yes.
But yeah, even if Abdurakhimov doesn't get get colded by the power, I think it's going to kind of sway the texture of the fight, and I like Derek Lewis to win. I am going to pick TKO. I'll say in the third. After a little bit of grinding, a little bit of kind of a dirtier fight than maybe Lewis is looking for. I'll say Derek Lewis TKO in the third.
Yeah, I could see it getting a bit grindy if Lewis doesn't pull this one off super quickly, but I do think he will get the job done. Within 5 minutes, I'll say. I just think Shamil Abdurakimov's chin isn't where it has to be to fight a guy like Lewis. Of course, Roy Nelson and Mark Hunt, Lewis isn't going to knock out those two fighters, but I mean, just about anyone else, if he lands, are probably going out. Shamil Abdurakhimov was, I believe, mounted by Tim Johnson in his debut or one of his earlier fights in the UFC. And
Tim Johnson's a good fighter.
Is it the mustache? Maybe
it is the mustache. It's 100% that he's like the most American dude ever, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. It's hard to look at that fight though and think, why can't Derek Lewis do just that and more? I think he probably finishes Shamil Abdurakhimov pretty quickly. Derek Lewis is a top 10 heavyweight, as weird as it sounds, because if this was any other division, a guy like Derek Lewis wouldn't be in the top 10, but this is heavyweight we're talking about, so that is why he's top 10. Shamil Abdurakhimov doesn't really deserve that 15th spot on the rankings, in my opinion. He's coming off that win over
I forgot
who did he last fight?
Who? Abdurakhimov?
Yes. Before that, it was Anthony Hamilton, who we just talked about.
Walt Harris. Is it Walt Harris? Yes, it was Walt Harris.
Yes, Walt Harris. And I didn't watch that fight closely, but from what I remember, it was not a good one.
Fun fight. No, it wasn't great.
No. Again, Abdurakhimov doesn't have anything to offer that Lewis hasn't seen, and it's not even like Lewis is a veteran. It's not like he's been in this game for decades and decades, but Shamil just won't have anything to offer Lewis to put Lewis in trouble. Derek Lewis, this is his fight to lose. He's going to get the job done. He's going to be violent. It's going to be quick. It's going to be a classic The Black Beast fight. He's going to take down Shamil Abdurakhimov, rain down the hammer punches, and lights out for Shamil Abdurakhimov. Give me the Black Beast to beast on Shamil Abdurakhimov. Abrak is actually his nickname, so I didn't totally mess that up, but and then it confused me. But Derek Lewis by TKO in the first round, hammer fist, punches, slaps that face, whatever it takes. Derek Lewis is going to get the job done. And with that, let's move right along to UFC 206, which takes place from the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, Canada, up here in the True North. The following night on Saturday evening, this Saturday. I feel like that took us a lot longer than it should have. The whole
that was a bad card. This is the good one.
I know, so I'm kind of
a really good card.
I know it really is, and even with the loss of DC and Rumble, and then the loss of Rashad, I still feel this is a pay-per-view worthy card. The buys will suck because no one really knows who Holloway and Pettis are. Let's be honest, but this deserves a lot of buys. Well, some buys anyways. This is a great card. I mean, you got Holloway, Pettis, Cerrone Brown, Swanson Choi, Kennedy Gaslam, Emil Mean, Krylov. Like, this is a good card. This is a legit pay-per-view card. People can say otherwise.
I'm going to firmly disagree with you.
Really?
I mean, I think this card is great. I do not in any way, but my definition of a pay-per-view card, this does not match that in the slightest. Because, like, I mean, brass tacks of it here, pay-per-view, like the term pay-per-view basically just means your main event is good. Like, your main event is a pay-per-view worthy main event because nobody really buys nobody's buying a pay-per-view because the 5-fight card that you are putting forth is great. They buy it for the headliner. And I think Max Holloway, Anthony Pettis is an incredible matchup between two of the best guys in the world at their particular weight division, and arguably would be some of the best guys at the weight division higher than them. But that card, like that fight should have been the headliner for fight night. Like, it should not be the co-main event. That fight should have been scheduled as the headliner for UFC Albany. And Lewis, because Lewis and Abdurakhimov, that's a co-main event for a fight night card. Like, that is what that fight screams to me. And Holloway Pettis is a Fox card or a fight night headliner. Like, it's one of those two as a headliner. It's going to do terrible pay-per-view numbers, and I do not begrudge anybody for not choosing to buy this. If you buy this, you basically are the type of person who's just going to buy everything.
I will disagree because I will buy this, and maybe it's not my own money, but if it was, I would still buy it. But
which one are you? What pay-per-view are you not buying now?
I haven't bought some. There. To be honest, I mean, there are. Just thinking the last one I didn't buy, honestly, and I regret it in hindsight, I believe was Rousey Holm.
How would you not buy that one?
I don't know.
I mean, granted, that one did what, like, it sort of grew into lore afterwards for what it was. But
yeah,
still,
exactly.
Like,
because
I would buy Rousey fighting a bucket.
Well, we didn't just because we thought it would end in 30 seconds. We thought it'd be the same old thing. Just watch the Instagram post afterwards. And besides that, you did have Double J, and that was great. But besides that, you had Mark Hunt, Bigfoot, and really not a whole lot. So we figured, of course, the biggest upset in UFC history or second, whatever, wouldn't happen. And it did. But
I actually didn't buy that one either. But I was
okay, so you can't. Okay, fair enough. That's fair. I was at home on my couch watching it in other fashions.
I also don't count this. Like, I've bought everything forever. So I think outside of having an actual social engagement that could not be moved off, I don't know the last time I was just like, I'll pass.
I guess the last one we didn't buy was actually 202 because I was in the States for that one, but I of course watched it, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, enough of that. Yeah, because we are
Ortiz
for a little while. Just because that card took us an hour, and this card is like 3 times better. So Risen podcast all over again. Here we go.
I'm
Dustin Ortiz. What was that?
I'm going to give you just quick heater shots on this one to move our pace along.
I feel like that should have happened on the last card, but of course, timing never works out. Zach Makovsky, Dustin Ortiz, 2 pretty good flyweights, but both are on 2-fight losing skids. So both guys need a win pretty badly here. Makovsky is at number 7 at 125. Ortiz just a bit below at number 11. Who are you picking here?
I'm picking Makovsky in what may well be the fight of the night. I expect this to be a really fun contest between 2 guys who are clearly very skilled fighters, but also very clearly outside of the upper echelon of their respective divisions. I mean, if you look at their records in general, both men have lost to the best fighters they fought. Like, if you just go sort of through their list, all the best fighters that they fought, they have lost to. The one exception to that general rule being Makovsky's got a win over Tim Elliott. And as we all saw the other, last weekend, this past weekend, Tim Elliott is a very good fighter. The caveat being Tim Elliott actually got way better between that fight and then. So the Tim Elliott he beat then was not the Tim Elliott who went toe-to-toe with Demetrius Johnson. So, both guys are sort of in that kind of vein where, like, you sort of know who they're going to lose to and who they're going to beat. And so when you're matching up 2 guys in the same strata of fighter, it's usually pretty interesting. It's substantive at the very least, and this fight will be really interesting because both men are really good grapplers. I do think Makovsky has more to offer on the feet, which may end up that may just end up making the difference. But I do in general favor him to win the grappling exchanges too, or at least to be able to use his wrestling to dictate how the grappling exchanges play out, and sort of force Ortiz into a reactive scrambling session, which Ortiz is very good at. But I like Makovsky to kind of just be a little bit ahead everywhere and win a really fun competitive decision. But maybe it ends up being a 30-27 decision, one of those 30-27s where all the rounds are close and fun, exciting rounds.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm not so sure this is going to be the fun, exciting fight you're thinking it will be. I feel like since both guys are kind of more known for their grind, for their wrestling and their grappling more so than their striking, both guys are well-rounded, but I feel like this is going to mostly take place on the mat and perhaps won't make for the funnest of fun fights, but hopefully they prove me wrong. I do favor fun size Zach Makovsky here. I think, as you said, he'll just be able to outpoint Ortiz in the grappling exchanges a bit better on the feet, very slightly, not a whole lot better, but it's close, of course. I feel like this is a fight that I've wanted to see for a long time. I feel like both guys are very similar as far as how they fight and what they're good at and also where they are in the division. Both guys are very similar skill-wise. So I feel like this is a fight that should have happened a long time ago. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, actually, just because it feels like a fight I've actually kind of wanted to see this fight. I remember calling for it like a year or 2 ago even, saying this is a fight that should happen, and here we are. I do think Makovsky will take it just for the reasons I said. Better striker, very slightly, a bit better, and then a bit better on the mat. I think he'll just be able to outpoint Ortiz for a unanimous decision. Next up, Jason Sago taking on Rustam Khabilov. Pretty interesting lightweight matchup. Sago, of course, looking really good since they split, lost to Paul Felder a couple years back. Khabilov on a winning streak as well. Are you picking the Canadian here or the Russian?
I'm picking the Russian, but there is a hefty amount of trepidation behind this selection. Justin Sago is a good fighter who he tore his ACL like a year ago or some such like that, and since then he's put together like you said, he's put together good wins. His knockout of Justin Salas was a good, impressive knockout. He takes a split decision over Leandro Silva, which is the same guy that Rustam Khabilov beat in a contentious, way closer than it should have been affair, and that's sort of the book on Khabilov in general, and kind of the book on this fight. Khabilov was considered like one of the top prospects for a long time. He's training at Jackson Wink. He is a really good defensive wrestler, and he can use that defensive wrestling to keep things on the feet, where he is an incredibly technical striker with power, speed, precision, like all the things. He kind of ticks all the boxes that you want. The one exception being he is so focused on countering, and he has a tendency to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, where he will just not throw, and it gives away rounds. And at high level MMA, giving away rounds means giving away fights, because it's not, you aren't, and we'll talk about this later for the main event this evening, but it's not just about landing the one piece of offense that will turn the tide or knock somebody out. It's just about putting forth consistent offense to win rounds over the course of time. And Khabilov has shown that he is not always willing to do it, and it has caused him to lose fights that he probably should win in general, and it has caused him to look way worse than he should against fighters he should be beating much cleaner. If he comes out and he does the same thing again and just still can't really generate a ton of offense, Jason Sego is good enough to take advantage of that. He's kind of scrappy enough to piece together something to get a win out of it. I will be honest, I was sorely tempted to make that prediction here, but I'm just ultimately not going to go with it. Khabilov is just a little bit, he's just better technically, and if Saturday night he comes out and just kind of stares at Sego and loses to some outside kicks at range, then I'll feel like an ass, but I'm prepared to take that feeling.
Yeah, Sego is very good on the ground. He's a great submission artist, but that won't be enough here. Rustam Khabilov, of course, is known for his wrestling for the most part. So, will that happen here? Will Khabilov go for the takedowns and look to grind out the win like he usually does? I'm not so sure, because, that's kind of risking that's a risk, so to speak, because he could get into Sego's guard if he's not careful and end up getting tapped out. It's very possible. Sego, as I said, good on the ground, and he does have those sneaky submissions. So we could actually see a stand-up affair, and if that's the case, I do think Khabilov is the better fighter on the feet, and he's a bit more powerful. Sego doesn't have a whole lot on the feet. He is getting better, but I feel like Khabilov just a bit more precise at this point in time. On the feet, that is. As far as the wrestling goes, of course, Khabilov all day, the Russian background and whatnot. This is a tough one. This is a toss-up, because I feel like Khabilov, as we all know, his biggest game and the best part of his game is the wrestling, and this could be sort of neutralized by Sego's grappling. So, as I said, we could see a stand-up fight. We could see Khabilov take the risk, take this one to the ground, and maybe he doesn't get caught. Maybe he does. So it could go either way. I will go Khabilov here, though. I do think he just because he has more ways to win, because I still think if he looks to wrestle Jason Sego, there's probably a better chance he doesn't get caught than he does. And then again, I think he can outpoint Sego on the feet. So give me Rustam Khabilov here by unanimous decision. Very quickly before we move on to the next fight, Daniel Levy at Best Fight Picks. It looks like he's going to join us. If that's all good with you. Yes, he is.
Atlanta boy.
What was that?
He and I live in the same city.
Yes, that is a true fact, a true statement from Jed Meshew.
That is a true fact.
The third of the night. I like it. Okay, let me send him the link. You move on, and let's talk John Makdessi, the Bull, taking Orlando Groovy Venata. John Makdessi coming off a couple wins in a row over Mehdi Baghdad and Yancy Medeiros. Of course, Medeiros was slightly. What was I saying? Oh, Medeiros. Yeah, that was a controversial decision. Baghdad, maybe a bit clear, but Lando Venata, though. Venata, though, is coming off that loss to Tony Ferguson, and man,
that's a moral victory, bro.
That boosted his stock by a lot. Lando Venata, John Makdessi, who are you picking?
I am picking Lando Venata. I'm picking Lando Venata confidently. It is a robust, girthy pick of Lando Venata, because I think he is the look at something special, man. The thing about Venata is even before he kind of got the last minute call up to the Tony Ferguson fight, the folks at Jackson Wink have been talking about him for a long time. Brandon Gibson's been a big the striking coach out there. He's been a big supporter of Lando Veneta, and with good reason. And we all got to see the good reason. He came in on short notice, and I say this a lot, that short notice fights aren't the best indicators of talent or anything like that, or what's going on, because both parties are affected in a short notice fight, kind of style matchups. And so, maybe take a bit of a grain of salt from the Tony Ferguson performance. Tony Ferguson had been training to fight a guy who is basically exactly nothing like Lando Veneta, and kind of got switched around at the last minute and then got jawed up a bit. But you can still take the good technical things we saw from Lando, because that is kind of the crux of his style. And I think it's a really good one. I think it's a very cutting-edge style for MMA, and I am really excited to watch Groovy start putting together a real campaign instead of facing, arguably the best lightweight in the world, and a guy who at this point kind of seems likely is about to fight for an interim belt.
And not a number one contender fight. Yeah, I mean, interim belt. Yeah. Honestly, you say that half jokingly, I imagine, but it's probably true.
No, he's going to. It's probably true. There's no joking there at all. From what I am hearing, there will be the target is an interim title fight, because McGregor's going to be out until next fall. He's going to be out for a while. So,
looking forward to that one. As far as the matchup, I am, but interim title, yuck.
Yeah, as far as the matchup, man, like I said, Lando Veneta his footwork is very high level considering how young he is in his career. He has a great understanding of angles. His just understanding of the striking game, considering where he's at in his age, his fight age, more so than, I mean, he's a young guy in general, but he's only got 9 fights. But he moves angles very well. His movement, his body movement, his head movement, the way he shifts his stance to set up strikes. He's actually, we didn't get to see much of this, but he's a fairly decent wrestler as well. Some of the things are going to get him caught, and John McDessie is a talented striker in his own right, and tricky enough that maybe he gives him a little bit of problems. The thing that sort of ended up kind of doing him in against Ferguson is Veneta does have a bit of a tendency to dip down, in a more boxing style thing, which will get you caught with knees, or in grappling exchanges get you caught with a snap down. Ultimately Ferguson was able to hit a Darce. Maybe McDessie can time a knee and make that a more dangerous proposition for Veneta. But realistically, I just think Veneta's boxing skill, his command of angles, is going to carry the day here. I'm very excited to see. I think it's a great fight because McDessie's a fun fighter, but I also think he's a little bit maybe on the decline. Veneta is only going up from here. Give me Lando Veneta. Give me let's go give me Lando Veneta with a early third, late second TKO.
I like it. All right. I'm going to make that a bit quicker than you did. Lando Veneta.
I really like Lando. My bad.
I can tell. Lando Veneta is my pick here. You kind of said everything I wanted to say. The angles will be key, I think. Both guys hit very hard, but I think it's going to be Veneta landing way more on McDessie than McDessie landing on Veneta, just because of those angles of Veneta's movement. Let's not forget, Lando Veneta, he did have Tony Ferguson in a little bit of trouble very momentarily, and Tony Ferguson is going to be an interim champion possibly very soon. He's one of the best lightweights, if not the best lightweight in the world today.
He's not. Habib.
I don't know. But we'll get to that when it happens, when the interim title's on the line in March. Lando Veneta, though, I mean, he had a lightweight top contender, let's call Tony Ferguson that, in a lot of trouble briefly. And just for that, again, his stock goes up rapidly, taking that fight on short notice as well. John McDessie, I completely agree that he's on the decline. He's, of course, a very precise and very powerful puncher. he's known for his striking and his knockout power, but Lando Veneta, I think, hits almost as hard, and I think he's just going to be a bit more effective on the feet. I think Makdessi will be swinging at air more so than at Veneta's face. So Lando Veneta, I really like him in this fight. John Makdessi, as I said, possibly on the decline. His chin, maybe it will hold up, maybe it won't, but I will say Lando Veneta gets the TKO win in the second round. I'll go mid-fight, maybe not first round. I think first round will be a fun back-and-forth fight, and then second round will be all Lando Veneta, and it'll wrap up in the second. Look at this. Daniel Levy is back on Before the Battle. He's been gone for what, 2 months, a month and a half. Daniel Levy, man behind bestfightpicks.com, is back. Daniel, how's it going? It's been a while.
It's going amazing, man. How are y'all doing? Jed, Nick, good to see y'all. I mean, Nikita Krylov and Max Holloway are fighting. You knew I had to come back for that one, so here I am.
Reason, Daniel. Only
Shorter
reason.
retirement than GSP.
Yes. I hope you're doing well. It's been a while, as I said. Let's get your pick quickly. Lando Veneta and John Makdessi.
Oh, Lando Veneta all day. Not because it's the trendy pick, but because you always fade John Makdessi. I mean, the guy left TriStar. He's doing the whole home gym thing. He's had more than one broken jaw. You already know the deal. All the red flags. You check all those boxes, and got to go with Lando Veneta here. He's younger, fresher, smoother on the feet. He's going to find the opening and get him out of there. And,
awesome. And
Nick, when he rocks him, he's not going to go for a flying armbar.
Yeah, that's true. Next up, we got Mitch Gagnon returning to action for the first time in a long time, taking on looking for a fight vet Matthew Lopez. Daniel, we'll start off with you. Are you going with the Canadian here or the American?
Man, I mean, Mitch Gagnon, back last time he fought, I mean, the dude turned up on Renan Barão. He gave it all he had, but we haven't seen him since. I mean, is he going to come back looking better? Has he made improvements? Or was that kind of the peak of his career? I really don't know. With Matthew Lopez, he ran into a really tough challenge in that debut against Hani Yahya. I mean, it's hard to look good against a guy like Yahya. So for me, dude, Mitch Gagnon's the better fighter, but picking him is kind of like depending on him looking better or as good as he did last time. So we'll have to see what happens, but Mitch Gagnon by decision.
For sure. And Jed, what about you? Are you going to agree with Daniel here, your fellow Georgian boy, Mitch Gagnon, or are you going against him and going with looking for a fight, Matt Lopez?
I agree with what he's saying, but I'm going to come down on the other end of it. I don't feel confident picking a dude who sat out for 2 years. He did look pretty good against Renan Barão before ultimately losing that fight. But like he said, Matt Lopez caught a rough first fight. Hani Yahya is a guy who it's just impossible to look good against, and and much more experience coming into the bout. So Lopez took the loss. I totally believe Gagnon can win. It will depend a lot on how he looks coming out because this has been a 2-year game, but he does have, a good submission game of his own. He is a technical striker. Probably, if we're being honest, he's better on the feet in general, but he is giving up age, size, a pretty substantial amount of size, giving up 4 inches of reach and a couple inches of height as well. And I just hate a 2-year layoff, and I will fade that all day, every day. So give me Matt Lopez on points.
Yeah, this is a tough one simply because of the layoff. I hate picking guys coming off of 2-year layoffs because you never know. Will there be ring rust? Probably. Will they be improved? Maybe. Will they be the same fighter? Possibly. It's really like who the heck knows. We don't know what Mitch Gagnon will look like until he steps inside the cage tomorrow or on Saturday, and by then it'll be too late to make our picks. Matt Lopez, yeah, his debut was a tough one. It was against Yanni Yaha, and as you guys said, it's hard to look good against Ronnie Yahya. Of course, just grappled Lopez for days and got him out of there. Didn't he tap him out in the third, or was it a decision? I stuttered there, and I don't know why.
Honestly,
A sub. I want to say a sub, but maybe not.
Wait, what were we talking about? Sorry, I was blanking.
You tuned out.
It's been a long day, guys.
We're talking about a Matthew Lopez fight. It's understandable, Jed.
True. Did Yaya tap out Lopez, or was it a decision?
He tapped him. I believe it was actually very late in the round.
Yes,
But
that's what I wanted. That's what I was thinking. Gagnon, of course, is a very good grappler. Not the grappler that Ronnie Yaya is. I think, though, he can still get Lopez down to the ground and grind this one out, maybe even choke Lopez out late. Lopez is tough, so I expect him to be able to survive, especially Gagnon will probably take at least a round to warm up and kind of get the ring rust off. He'll probably suffer ring rust for a round or two, and then get into the flow of things by the end of the fight. By then, maybe it's too late. Who knows? Matt Lopez, as you said, their Jed, I believe, 4-inch reach advantage, so that could be key. Maybe he stands back, doesn't let Gagnon get
a bigger dude in general. The tangibles there, but he is a bigger fighter.
He's thick for bantamweight. Yes, he is. But the reach could be key. But I want to think Gagnon will be able to get inside and get this to the ground where he wants it. So that's what I'm going to pick. But if Lopez is able to stand back and outpoint Gagnon on the feet, because he's definitely the better striker, I wouldn't be shocked. But I will go Mitch Gagnon to grind this one out on the mat. Maybe even tap out Lopez late, but I'll go Gagnon by unanimous decision. Next up, we got the Quebec kid Olivier Aubin-Mercier taking on Drew Dober. Jed,
we're just skipping Valerie Letourneau like that?
We are.
Dude, that's brutal. Well, before we do that, I'm just going to let all the people out there know ATT all day, baby. Valerie Letourneau gonna put the hands on Vivian Perrier.
Some journalist over here.
I know, right? I'm so legitimate when I'm rocking an ATT hat and riding hard for my girl.
Yes. I guess quickly, if you wanna pick that one, I think I know who you're picking, but
I would just pick Letourneau. She's a much more established fighter.
Because you're wearing an ATT hat. Yes.
I mean, in general, I train at ATT, so got to do that. But she has an enormous size advantage. Is a much more established fighter. Vivian Perrier is realistically not if we're being honest, she shouldn't even really be a 115 pounder. She's an atom weight, but that's not a thing. So. No knock on that. That's just all we got.
Okay, moving on. Olivier Aubin-Mercier and Drew Dober. Jed, back to you. Drew Dober or the Quebec kid? Who are you picking here?
Oh, I don't.
This is a tough one.
It's a tough one because I feel like I'm just really bad at predicting Drew Dober fights. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I think that's my most difficult thing because he consistently surprises me, and I don't think too terribly much of him as a fighter in general. But he has just kind of kept winning despite me thinking that he shouldn't win. I think I'm maybe starting to give him enough credit for what he can do. He's a pretty decent striker, but I'm going to pick against him again. I think Aubin-Mercier he's much better on the ground, and I don't think Drew Dober can keep it on the feet. If he can, then it becomes a much better fight for him. Just straight up, if he can keep it on the feet, he's got a real chance to win. I just don't think he's going to. I think Aubin-Mercier is going to be able to land takedowns and hustle on top. Give me Aubin-Mercier submission. Let's go first round, Let's just do it early. First round submission, Olivier Aubin-Mercier.
Awesome. And Daniel, Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Some people call him the next GSP. I don't think he's there. And Drew Dober, who are you picking?
I don't know who those some people are, Nick, but I'll tell you this, man. Drew Dober's a badass. He's the kind of badass that will lose to you in a fight, and then he'll marry your sister. He straight up did that, man. So
I know. It's amazing.
I tip my cap to Drew Dober and, nice leg kicks. Maybe he's putting it together. Maybe that's what happened in the last fight, or maybe that was a favorable matchup. But with Olivier Aubin Mercier, obviously we got to talk about the grind. But more importantly for me, I think his biggest weapon is that body kick. Oh, my God. He's got a serious body kick in his arsenal. But the time to fade Olivier Aubin Mercier was when he fought Carlos Diego Ferreira, and Diego was plus 260. That's where
on USADA stuff.
But in this spot right here, that's a good point too, though, about OAM. How's he looking post USADA? But I think we've seen him. I'm sure he's looking fine. And plus, it's in Canada, so you know how that goes. So I got OAM to grind out a decision here.
Interesting. I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna go Drew Dober. He's coming off the win over Jason Gonzalez, and yeah, that is a fight with Jason Gonzalez. And can you take a whole lot away from that? I took away that he's improving his striking. Of course, I would like to see his striking against a higher profile fighter, and maybe we will see that. I think we will. OAM, of course, super good at the grind. That's really one of the only things he's good at. As Daniel mentioned, yes, the body kick is there, but his striking just really isn't that great as far as his boxing goes. I think Drew Dober keeps him on the feet for the most part. I think he keeps him on the feet. Again, it's kind of weird saying that because I feel like OAM is just so good at the grind and should be able to get Dober down to the ground. But Dober is a good grindy and gritty and tough fighter as well. We kind of look at him now, well, at least kind of my impression at first was, oh, he's a striker all of a sudden. But let's go back. He does grind out a lot of his fights, and it doesn't always look pretty, but he does get the job done. Look at like the Scott Holtzman fight not too long ago, for example. That was back on January 2nd of this year. It's been a while, but this guy is a gritty fighter, and I think he's getting better. I've never been that high on the Quebec kid. As Daniel said, the time to fade OAM was against Carlos Diego Ferreira. I kind of tailed Daniel there, and it paid off. But I'm going to fade him once again. I think the time to fade the Quebec kid is, again, now. And I think Drew Dober will be able to keep this fight where he wants it. I think he has more ways to win as well. I don't think, even if OAM gets it down to the ground, I don't think he will absolutely dominate and tap him out super quickly. I do think Dober can make it competitive on the mat. So I think he has more tools in this fight to win. So give me Drew Dober by unanimous decision. Now next up, we got the People's main event. Nikita, let's go Al Capone. Screw the minor. Nikita Al Capone Krylov taking on Misha Cirkunov. Jed, are you going to go with the Canadian here? Or, well, can I even call Cirkunov Canadian, Latvian, whatever? Or Nikita Krylov? You
can call him Canadian. He lives in Toronto. And hell no, I'm going with the minor because I like fun and I'm not a horrible person. If we're being honest, Cirkunov is probably a judicious favorite here. But I don't care. For one, I just don't care. And two, I don't love Nikita Krylov, ironically. I genuinely love his game. I love everything about him, what he has accomplished. He came into the UFC as a joke. He came in as a joke, and he is very clearly not that. He is a top 10 light heavyweight, is justified in being that. And he has made dramatic, rapid, consistent improvement over the course of his career, and he is still – it's an important thing to remember. The dude is still 24, maybe 25. I don't know if he turned 25 this year or if he's about to turn 25. He is still young. He is still rapidly improving, and he has the exact type of game that is both different. He's bringing a different kind of offense to the light heavyweight division in that he is just throwing the kitchen sink, hammer, nails, everything he's got at you until you fall down. And that type of pace is definitely a rarity for what he's fighting in. And he's just getting better at it. Cirkunov has avenues to win. I would not be super surprised if he just landed some takedowns and grinded it out. Krylov has not been a phenomenal defensive wrestler. He kind of gets by on he's a pretty good scrambler and sort of finds his ways into advantageous positions against less talented fighters, essentially. Cirkunov is very good. He's developing on the feet. He's not there yet, but I don't care. The Miner is going to run across the cage. He's going to put offense forward. He's going to throw knees and kicks and punches. He's getting better every day, and he's getting a lot better at doing craftier setups on the feet as well. I like him to do that to Misha Cirkunov and just wilt the Torontonian under a hellfire of truth and justice and freedom, because that is what Nikita Krylov does. Nikita Krylov TKO round 2, book it.
Yeah, it's not looking too fantastic for the Canadians. We all went Lando Veneta, and me and Jed went Kablov. We did go Gagnon, then I went Dober. Daniel, Nikita Krylov, the Miner, or / Al Capone, Misha Cirkunov, number 8, number 13. Pretty interesting fight at light heavyweight. Very interesting, I should say. And could determine kind of the next guy, the next up-and-comer, the next even contender at 205. Who are you picking?
You know, I got to go Nikita Krylov all goddamn day. I mean, what he's about to do, the statement he's about to make, I mean, we're all going to understand that he really is, you know, the future of the light heavyweight division. He's just a kid. He's only 24 years old. And, you know, Jed was mentioning how a lot of people viewed him as a joke when he first came in. I never viewed him as a joke, and I'll tell you why. Because when he fought Soa Palele and he weighed 220 pounds and Soa Palele weighed 265 pounds and he almost finished Palele, and you know what I'm saying? And then he lost the fight. Then he goes down a weight class. Actually, no. And then he knocks out Walt Harris in 16 seconds or something like that. You know, he loses to OSP when he's 21, 22. Now he's on a 5-fight win streak. The kid's putting it together. It's not.
I might pick him to beat OSP now.
Yeah, exactly. It's not traditional striking either. It's not just a 1-2 and a 3. I mean, this guy is throwing a jab to a left high kick to a cross to a right body kick. I mean, his Kyokushin background is really translating into MMA. And on the ground, just like Jed said, you know, it's not like he's going to be throwing up triangles or arm bars or any shit like that, but his scrambling ability and his awareness that, hey, I do need to get back up to my feet. That's going to be a big factor here, because with Misha, he's too slow and stiff to stand on the feet with Krylov. That's for sure. You know, it's going to be one shot at a time. He's going to load up, throw a big overhand right, big left hook, and then try to clinch and take the fight to the ground. He might get it to the ground, but I feel like Krylov's scrambling abilities are going to be able to get him back to his feet, where he's going to knock out Misha Cirkunov. And, of course, he had the bet at a +110. I mean, you kidding me? They disrespected my boy.
Yeah, I really can't believe Nikita is the underdog. I wouldn't be surprised if that line has already flipped or will flip by fight day. I will complete the hat trick. Give me Nikita Krylov once again going against my fellow Canadian. How am I doing this? Because I will, I don't know, be right, maybe. Usually I'm more wrong than right, so we'll see what happens. Nikita Krylov, though, I do like him against Misha Cirkunov. Cirkunov, I'm more high. I'm higher on him than a lot of people. A lot of people keep picking against him, and I don't totally understand that. Like against, say, like Ian Kudalaba, I saw quite a few people picking Kudalaba, and I just didn't totally see that happening. And I believe his last fight before that as well. But he does have a ceiling. For now, I still think he's going to get better. I think he'll learn. He'll walk away with the loss on his record, but I do think he'll learn and come back even better. But right now, in both of their respective careers, at this point in time, I think Nikita Krylov is the better fighter all around, and I think he'll get the job done. He's super powerful on the feet. As kind of Daniel mentioned, it's not your basic striking, super flunking on the feet. I mean, he's knocking guys out left and right. He's looking super good, and he does have some submission skills under his belt as well. The reach, surprisingly, I kind of thought Krylov would have a reach advantage here, but of course, Cirkunov, it's tied both at 77 inches, so that's kind of interesting. But I do like Krylov big time on the feet. Cirkunov is going to try and clinch and get this on the ground. Maybe he gets it down to the ground, but as I said, Krylov does have an all-right submission game, and just being able to get back to his feet, he's pretty good at that, as Daniel mentioned as well. So I don't think that's going to be a huge problem in this fight. I would be pretty surprised if Cirkunov is able to repeatedly take Krylov down and grind out for a decision or late stoppage. I think, if anything, Nikita Krylov will get this done on the feet. He'll keep this on the feet, and get the knockout win. I'll go late in the first, maybe early in the second. But I'll go out on a slight limb here and go Nikita Krylov by late first round knockout. Now next up, we got Jordan Mein returning since his retirement that lasted just under 2 years. He last fought Thiago Alves, lost by body kick TKO in the second round, UFC 183. Emil Meek making his debut, coming off a win at Venator FC3 over Huzmar Paul Harris, that knockout win. Very impressive stuff from the newcomer here. Jed, we'll start out with you. Are you going to go with Jordan Mein here, or do you think Emil Meek can pull this one off in his debut?
I'm going with Emil Meek because he beat Paul Harris, and beating Paul Harris is great and successful, and I'm a big supporter of it. Also because, I mean, like if straight up, like, yes, sorry. Straight up, yeah, Jordan Mein is a better technical fighter. He's a good striker. He's got good sharp boxing, pumps a good jab, mixes his levels of attack very well, pretty decent footwork. Not a great grappler, but a strong defender of takedowns. Like, these are things that I would normally be like, oh yeah, he's going, like, this is the avenue to win this fight here. Because I like Emil Meek. I think he's kind of raw in general. But he throws with big power, and he's a decent scrambler, stuff like that. He's a fun fighter. Jordan Mein is a more skilled fighter. And if that were the texture of the fight, then I would pick Jordan Mein. Jordan Mein has fought like twice in 3 years, with coming off that essentially a 2-year layoff at this point. And even before then, he fought once and then took a huge layoff back to mid 2014, before the Alves fight. Like, I don't really trust a guy coming off a layoff like that, a guy who retired and then sort of decided not to. I'm just not in on it. So I give me Emil Meek to win a close decision, just because he's been actively fighting, and he's a fun guy who will be sort of interesting to watch his progression as long as he goes. And I have no idea if Jordan Mein really wants to be here or not.
And Daniel, what do you think about this fight? Jordan Mein taking on Emil Meek in a very intriguing welterweight matchup.
It's an intriguing fight, like you said, man. I mean, I got a lot of questions heading into this fight. Obviously, where's Jordan Mein at mentally? I mean, I know what he brings to the table as far as his fighting skills. I mean, his striking is unbelievable. I mean, he'll trap your hands, throw elbows down the middle. I mean, you remember that fight against Cyborg where, I mean, we don't talk about that fight because, we haven't heard from Cyborg since. I mean, dude, he fucking buried him. And Jordan Mein's a total badass. And with Emil Meek obviously coming off that fight with Paul Harris, you got to get into the UFC after a fight like that. But, is he still on that Valhalla sauce, if you know what I mean? I mean, what's he going to look like at the weigh-ins? I really don't know, man. But here's the thing.
He's looking pretty good right now. So
yeah. He took his shirt off at media day and looked pretty ripped.
Yeah,
so.
he went shirtless, and he's looking bricked up.
The Valhalla is strong with him. He's
not a man I'd seek a fight with.
Based on principle, you got to pick Meek based on principle. But, I mean, Jordan's such a better fighter than him. And Meek's one of these guys that he's not going to go down without a fight. He has been knocked out in the past. But if you don't get him out of there, he's going to get you out of there. He's one of those guys, you know what I mean? Tough as fuck and hits very, very hard. So, we'll have to see. We have seen Jordan Mein break in the past, even before the whole retirement thing. And it's the guys that he's broken against are guys that walk through the fire and stand up to him. He's almost like a bully in the sense that, if he can't get his offense off on you, he's going to quit a little bit. So it's about, can Meek withstand it or not? I really don't know. Yeah, and that's what we're going to find out. I'll pick Meek based on principle and him being the underdog. But if Jordan Mein goes out there and knocks him out in the first round, I'm not going to be the least bit surprised because Jordan Mein is a way better fighter than Emil Meek.
Yeah, this is a tough one just because technically Jordan Mean is better, but Emil Meek has the power. Jordan Mean is coming off the supposed retirement, 2 year layoff. Will there be ring rust? Probably. Does he want to be there? I think so. I think his head is where it should be at. I listened to a couple of interviews with me today, one with James Lynch and one with Ariel Helwani. It seems like he's good. He's in good spirits. It's not like he was forced back or anything. It seems like he wants to be here. Although who's going to come back and say, no, I don't want to be here? Maybe Cole Miller, but that's probably it. Emil Meek, I still do think will get the job done. This is a very tight matchup, though, just because, as kind of both of you mentioned, I feel like Mean is the better technical fighter, but Meek has the power. And Mean, he has been finished in the past, of course. His latest fight, he was finished, but that was more of a body kick, and he was beating Alves before that. How much do you look into that? I don't know. Probably not a whole lot. Emil Meek, though, he's a wild fighter, and he's green, and he's raw, but I feel like he has a lot of potential. A win over Rusmar Paul Harris, that's big in my opinion. Paul Harris is ripping guys' arms off. John Fitch, well, more the knee bar there, and then of course, ripping Jake Shields' eyes out. Again, not necessarily the leg or the arm, but more so the eyes. But yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. I think Emil Meek will get it done, but I'm not confident just because he is a bit scrappy, a bit wild. But he's here to fight, and I do think he will get the job done over Jordan Mean, who has taken quite a bit of damage for his age. He's still young. He's still in his 20s, but I believe this is his 40th fight or so. Yeah, so 40th pro fight. That is crazy for a guy still in his 20s. Yes, he's had a lot of experience. Could the experience come into play? Absolutely. But he has taken more damage than Emil Meek. So give me Emil Meek by I'll go TKO. I'm not sure he knocks Jordan Mean out flush, but I do think he'll get the job done inside the distance because it would be tough to see Meek win a decision just because, well, I think I don't know a whole lot about his cardio, but just looking at him physically, I want to say he would gas out should this fight go to the third. So we will see, but my pick here is Emil Meek. Moving on, we got Tim Kennedy making his return. Again, so many guys coming off the layoff, so that's why this card is so close, and there's only, I believe, the only 2-1 underdog here is Matt Brown coming up later. I believe everyone else is just minus one something odds, 150, 170, whatever. But of course, very close card in general. Tim Kennedy making his return, taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum, after a huge debacle at the New Yorker at UFC 205 last month, didn't tip the scales, but supposedly missed weight by about 10 pounds, and now is back at 185. His last 185 fight was the win over Nate Marquardt. And, of course, Tim Kennedy coming off a 2-year layoff. His last fight, UFC 178, third-round knockout to Yoel Romero. Maybe a in-between round win for him. You can go either way on that one. Tim Kennedy, Kelvin Gastelum. Daniel, who do you like here?
I like Kelvin Gastelum all day here. Got 2 units on this one, plus 130. I mean, straight up, I think he's going to whoop Tim Kennedy's ass. But since I got to break it down, I mean, look, he's an aggressive southpaw. He's going to be way faster than Tim Kennedy. And, people like to bring up, but Tim Kennedy beat Michael Bisping. Yeah, he beat Michael Bisping after Bisping came off a year layoff, with that eye surgery. People say Bisping only has one eye. So, of course, he looked rusty in that fight. On any other occasion, I think Bisping whoops Tim Kennedy. And then in that Yoel fight, people are like, he almost knocked out Yoel. Yeah, he had 10 seconds of success in the Yoel fight. What about the 13 minutes of success that Yoel had in that fight? Yoel whooped Tim Kennedy. And now Tim Kennedy, he's taken 2 years off, not because of injuries. It's because, first he's starting a fighters union, then he's finding Hitler. This dude doesn't want to fight anymore. He's got 1 foot out the door. And with Kelvin, the fans don't like him because he missed weight at 205. But, I mean, who cares? On this guy's worst possible day, he's hospitalized, he misses weight by 11 pounds, and he still goes to a split decision with the world champion Tyron Woodley. Kelvin Gastelum is a gamer, and he's about to put it on Tim Kennedy. And I think this might be Tim Kennedy's last fight. So I got Kelvin for sure here. That work at King's MMA is about to pay off big time.
Very interesting. I wouldn't be shocked if Gastelum gets the victory here, but even if that happens, I'm not as confident. I'm actually picking Tim Kennedy, and I'll get to that later. But if
Get
I
to
was
it
to back
now.
Gastelum, it would be not that confident, but we'll see. Jed, I saw you were looking down when Daniel was was saying who he was picking, and then you perked up when he said Kelvin Gastelum. Are you surprised Daniel's picking Gastelum? Do you like Gastelum, or do you think Tim Kennedy gets the job done?
I'm excited because we are so far apart on this particular prediction. It is incredibly fun to me when we're not all saying the same things. I disagree with Danny about just about everything he said right there. I mean, with and I'd like to point out to you, Dan, people don't knock on Kelvin just because he blew weight the one time. He's blown weight like 3 times, maybe even 4 at this point. It is 4 because 205 didn't end up happening. So 205 was the 4th time that he blew weight. He just never hit the scales. So that's the knock on Gastelum, and I'm picking Tim Kennedy. I'm super intrigued by this fight, honestly. It still goes with the same thing I've been saying. Tim Kennedy is coming off a long layoff. I have a lot of trepidation about that in general. But I do think stylistically, there are just so many questions that it's super interesting to me. Tim Kennedy is an enormous middleweight, not by the general dynamics. Like he's pretty short for the division. He doesn't have like an enormous reach. So that kind of makes up the gap here that Gastelum will face as a middleweight. Gastelum is going to be a tiny middleweight dimensionally. So against Tim Kennedy, he's not super on the wrong end of that spectrum, but Tim Kennedy cuts a shitload to make the weight. He is thick like a loaf of bread. He's wide as all get out. What he does, I think, plays pretty well against Gastelum here. Kelvin is a pretty good offensive wrestler. He's a much less good defensively. Tim Kennedy is a powerhouse of a grappler. Once he gets a hold of you, he's gonna stay with that pretty doggedly. I do think Gastelum is a better technical striker. I think he's going to have a decent speed advantage. The fact that he's a southpaw gives him a little bit of extra room to operate in. He works more consistently at a higher pace. Like these are things that work well, that play well for him here. But the one thing I do agree with Danny wholeheartedly is working with Kings MMA and Rafael Cordero, I think is a really good move for him. And he's now put enough time in there that we're starting to see that really make a tangible difference. You can start seeing the effects there. And so that is the thing that gives me the most trepidation in picking Tim Kennedy, even more so than Kennedy's layoff, is just that I think that type of pressuring style really suits what Kelvin is good at. And so that makes me think a little bit. But still, that being said, Tim Kennedy is a well-trod veteran of the sport. He has fought really good people and been competitive with them throughout. He lost the Romero fight. He had success in it, but he lost. But his loss has been to the absolute cream of the crop at middleweight, and we have nothing to believe that Gastelum is on that level. Granted, that was 2 years ago. But I think that his size, his strength, his grappling proficiency is going to be enough to kind of wear on the smaller man, and in clinch exchanges and everything else, I like him to grind out a win in what probably is a closer fight than you would maybe hope for a guy, sort of with a little bit of the name value of Tim Kennedy, but I like him to win. I'm picking him to win.
Hold on.
Yeah. Yes, Daniel.
2 things. Firstly, I'm surprised you didn't really put too much stock into the 2-year layoff like you did in the Matthew Lopez fight. But one thing that we haven't brought up is the fact that this kid, Kelvin Gastelum, won tough at middleweight. He finished Josh Saman back when finishing Josh Saman mattered. He beat the hell out of Uriah Hall back when everyone was scared of Uriah Hall. He beat the crap out of Nate Marquardt. Nate Marquardt's been knocking dudes out lately. Nate Marquardt is always dangerous. It's not like Kelvin's not experienced at middleweight. This dude's undefeated at middleweight. Since the last time Tim Kennedy's fought, hasn't Kelvin fought like 4 or 5 times? And, people bring up the fact that, oh, but Neil Magny threw him around. His defensive wrestling sucks. Listen, in my opinion, this is the excuse I'm going to make for him. Neil caught him with the element of surprise, because when you saw Kelvin go up against Tyron Woodley and Johnny Hendricks, who are way better wrestlers than Neil Magny, Kelvin didn't have those problems. When you train to fight a guy like Neil Magny, you're thinking about the tallest guy. You're thinking about closing that distance, dealing with the straight punches. You don't think about defensive wrestling. He got caught by the element of surprise in that fight. That's why when he fought Tyron and Johnny, his defensive wrestling was fine, and it's going to be fine here too.
I just want to point out one thing. Your argument just went, well, let's not talk about let's not forget Gastelum had all this success at middleweight in a further back timeline than Tim Kennedy's success at middleweight. And yes, the 2-year layoff is a thing, but his level of competition at the weight class is markedly better. And I agree with you, actually, on the Neil Magny tip in general. I still think that Tim Kennedy is a significantly better wrestler and offensive grappler, and the size and strength advantage he is going to have in these tie-ups is going to carry the day. The 2 years off, or 3 years, I don't know, how long has it been? Tim Kennedy's been out forever.
September 2014.
Yeah, it gives me pause, but I was going to pick Tim Kennedy to beat Rashad Evans pretty cleanly.
But that's a different story.
It is in a way, but I would pick Rashad Evans to beat Kelvin Gastelum, because Kelvin Gastelum is a welterweight who just needs to figure out how to cut his weight effectively. And Tim Kennedy is a light heavyweight who frankly probably should honestly just fight at light heavyweight. I think he might have more success there, and he's been a very successful middleweight.
A million years
now. Now, as far as this goes, I'm kind of in the middle of both you. Daniel is very, very confident in Gastelum. Jed is somewhat confident in Kennedy. That's what I'm kind of taking away from you anyways.
I won't be surprised if Gastelum wins, but I definitely favor Kennedy to pick up the W.
Yes, I'm in the same boat as you. I won't be shocked if Gastelum wins, because I'm actually higher on Gastelum than a lot of people. But that's at welterweight, and that's at middleweight going up against an aging Nate Marquardt. That's not going up against a top 10 middleweight in Tim Kennedy. Now, the two biggest factors, one on each side of the fight that I look at is, first off, the layoff. The layoff could be key, and that could be the whole fight right there. Tim Kennedy coming off the 2-year layoff, knockout loss to Yoel Romero. How will he look? We don't know. He's been doing a lot of TV shows. He said in an interview today he filmed a movie that was released this year. He's doing the Mixed Martial Arts Athletes Association as of late.
Reality show.
Well, as I said, yes, the TV shows as well. And he even admitted that, will he fight again? He doesn't know. It'll take a lot for the UFC to get him back. So does he have one foot out the door? Absolutely.
That's negotiating tactics, bro.
Possibly.
Sure, but, man. Back when he fought Roger Gracie, was it Roger or Daniel? I don't even remember. But at UFC 162, he fought one of the Gracies. Even back then, he was saying shit like, "I can make more money being a garbage man." Like, the dude doesn't want to. He doesn't even want to be there. I know Kelvin wants to be there. And also, last thing.
He didn't want to be in New York.
The only thing with New York, the only reason that he came back was because of New York. He said, I wasn't planning on coming back, but, since it's 205 Madison Square Garden, I'll come back for that. That didn't happen. Now he's got to peak again at UFC 206. Lots of red flags, guys.
Yeah, New York to Toronto, that must suck. But now the reason, and the biggest reason I am picking Tim Kennedy here is the size. I think the size will be absolutely detrimental in this fight. I think it'll be key, and I think at the end of the day, it'll be the decider of this fight. Tim Kennedy will be able to bully Kelvin Gastelum. Now, Tim Kennedy isn't inches and inches taller than Gastelum, and he doesn't have a huge reach advantage, but he is thick. As Jed mentioned, could he fight at a light heavyweight? Yeah. I like him at middleweight because he's not necessarily too short and too stocky for the division. He of course, has a lot of success as a grappler and as a wrestler, but at 205, then you're looking at a height disadvantage perhaps and a reach disadvantage. So that maybe I don't want Kennedy at light heavyweight, but Kennedy at middleweight I feel is perfect. Gastelum at middleweight, not so perfect. Gastelum just needs to find a guy that can help him cut weight effectively and not miss by 10 pounds, and then you're looking at a good top 5 welterweight contender. I don't think Kelvin Gastelum is a top 5 and maybe even top 10 middleweight contender, just because he's going to get bullied by Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy is way stronger than Gastelum. I think he's a lot thicker. Gastelum, let's look at, look at, he's not that big of a welterweight. Yes, he's thick, but he's just not that huge even at 170. So he's going to be a lot smaller than Kennedy as far as their body mass goes and body size. And I think Kennedy, that plays fully into his advantage as a wrestler and as Jed mentioned, as a grappler, of course. Kennedy will be able to bully Gastelum up against the fence and on the mat for 3 rounds. Of course, that also is Gastelum's game. Gastelum is the better striker, slightly better boxer. Kennedy doesn't have a whole lot on the feet. But if it is on the feet, yeah, maybe Gastelum can pick Kennedy apart, maybe, but I don't see this fight playing out on the feet for much for that long. I think Tim Kennedy gets it to the mat pretty quickly, or at the very least the defense, and I think Tim Kennedy will grind out a unanimous decision. Now, Daniel, quickly, do you want to add anything onto what I said? Because I know, of course, you're all in Gastelum, or shall we move on to the third last fight?
I mean, I think all 3 of us made our points pretty clearly. I mean, the only thing is about the style matchup. Tim Kennedy's, it's not like he's a dude that throws multi-combinations. He's a one shot at a time. He circles around, waits for his opportunity. I just feel like that's a bad stylistic matchup for a southpaw that's a volume striker but can also crack. It's about Tim Kennedy landing that one big shot or implementing the wrestling. I just don't see him having the edge here. But, unless you guys have a response to that, I think we should move on.
I just want to quickly add that you're talking how Tim Kennedy isn't exactly known for striking, and I agree, and that's kind of why I don't think this will take place on the feet really at all. So,
yeah, that's if it stays on the feet, yeah, Gastelum's going to win. Like I think that's not really a controversial thing to say. I would feel pretty okay if I knew that this was going to be an entirely striking affair. I probably would pick Gastelum. The last thing I'll say is sort of a response to you, Nick. I disagree with the statement that Gastelum can't be a top middleweight. I don't think he's going to – I totally believe that he can put together a run at middleweight akin to Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker was a welterweight, moved up. The division is a little bit top-heavy. It's a little bit thinner than welterweight in general. And his body type is one that could, if he put together a concentrated like powerlifting strength training program, he could end up filling out and looking pretty similar to a Tim Kennedy in the division. I just think it's too soon. He is at this point should be a welterweight, and I do not know the reason why he can't make his weight. Like I just don't know.
Because he's not dedicated enough. That's kind of what I imagine. What else can it be, really?
It's not the word around the campfire. But
it's not that he's not dedicated in the training. It's in the diet lifestyle.
No, that's what I mean. No, of course, nothing to do with training.
But to Jed's point, even though these 2 guys have different body types, there are a lot of smaller middleweights that are having success. Guys like Robert Whittaker. Even, maybe Kelvin Gastelum. But how about a guy like Krzysztof Jotko? I mean, I know he's got a completely different body type than Kelvin, but he's a small middleweight, and that dude, he's 19-1. He's whooping dudes' asses.
Fair enough. All right.
Jotko's dope.
Let's move on.
Wait, he's what? I couldn't hear you.
Jotko is dope.
Oh, yeah, that's my boy right there.
All right, let's move on.
2 times in a row as the dog. And he was plus 200 against McRory, which is amazing.
All right, we got 3 left. Let's do this because I got work to do.
Yes. Cub Swanson, Doo Ho Choi, one of the best fights on the entire card. Number 4, number 11 at featherweight. Very, very, very intriguing matchup. Jed, are you going to go with the American or the South Korean?
I'm going with the Korean Superboy. It's not a super confident pick in general, but this does just feel like one of those fights where one fighter's going up, one fighter's going down. Duho Choi he's kind of the hot prospect that people are looking at, people are excited about because he has got dynamite in his right hand and he has a variety of ways to kind of find that shot, put it in place and pick up the win. And it's impossible not to love him. He looks like he's 5. He looks like he's younger than you, Nick.
Yes.
But he just goes out there and murders people. And it does feel like Cub Swanson is running down his thing. The difference here, Cub Swanson has the technical advantages, I believe. I think he's a little craftier just in general. If this was a skill for skill fight and that was it, then okay, I'd pick up Swanson, but it's not. I think he's fading a little bit. And really that's all. I think that's all that really needs to be said. I think he's on the downside of his career. Duho Choi is going up. He cracks real hard. They're going to get into one of those exchanges that Choi likes to initiate, where he kind of comes forward, jabs a little bit, maybe throws a leg kick or something, and then once he's kind of in range, he sort of baits an attack out and then counters with a kill shot. So I suspect that's what will end up happening. If Cub Swanson's craft ends up carrying the day and he's still got a little bit left in the tank, I won't be super surprised. But the pick is Choi, knockout, say second round.
Interesting. And Daniel, are you going to go with the Korean Superboy here, the slight favorite last time I checked, or do you think Killer Cub can continue his winning streak to 3 in a row?
I don't know about slight favorite, man. He was like minus 240 last time I checked, but either way, man, just like with the next 2 fights, it's always sad when, some of your favorite fighters start to decline, they start to get old, but it's a reality of the sport, and we need to accept it and understand it, and that's what's going on with Cub right now, man. He's on that decline for sure. What I like about Duho Choi is obviously the straight, accurate power punches. I mean, you don't see a lot of guys that throw straight, clean, crisp punches like he does. And also, I had the question, so what happens if he gets taken down? Well, he got taken down against Thiago Tavares. He stayed calm, and he got right back up. That, to me, was a very good sign that, he doesn't freak out when he gets taken down. And now he's fighting the guy with the most experience that he's ever fought. It's going to be a passing of the torch moment. I think he gets him out of there. A straight combination, and he knocks out Cub Swanson.
Yeah, this is a interesting fight because I think Cub Swanson, of course, he's known for his striking, but I think if Cub Swanson wants to win this fight, he has to use his wrestling. We saw it a little bit in the Tatsuya. Well, we saw it a little bit in the Tatsuya Kawajiri fight, and obviously, if he stands toe to toe with Duho Choi, he probably will get knocked out. His best chance is to take this to the ground because, of course, Choi. Yeah, he can get taken down, but as Daniel kind of added there, he also did get right back up against Thiago Tavares. So I don't see the wrestling being a huge problem for Duho Choi. I think even if Swanson gets him down, I think Duho Choi probably gets up. Maybe Cub Swanson surprises us and lays on top of Duho Choi for three rounds. That would be quite interesting. But I do think Duho Choi keeps it where he wants it. This guy is super powerful on the feet. He's so young and so talented. This guy is the future of the featherweight division. Duho Choi, the Korean Superboy, will do Superboy things. Give me Duho Choi by first-round knockout. As I said, super powerful on the feet, super precise, super accurate. This guy is really, really fun to watch. Give me Duho Choi by knockout in the first round. Cub Swanson, though, is always game, but he is on the decline. So I think in that regard and idea, I think it's kind of, as you mentioned, Daniel, the passing of the torch. Cub Swanson, of course, longtime contender, but I think it's time for Duho Choi to find himself close to the top of the 145-pound division. Next up, we got the co-main event of the evening, Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Matt Brown, number 5 versus number 14 at the 170-pound division. Mr. Daniel Levy, are you going to go with Cowboy or the Immortal?
Well, I'm definitely not going to bet this fight because I'm emotionally invested. I mean, 2 of my favorite fighters, but especially Matt Brown. I mean, how can you not love Matt Brown? I mean, the dude's such a badass, especially when he was on that streak, that fight against Eric Silva, the Jordan Meehan fight. But even if you go back to his Pete Sell fight, I mean, just Matt Brown is just awesome to watch. And, everyone likes to talk about the body, but Cowboy's got a weak body too. Don't forget that he's been TKO'd with body strikes too, okay? It's not just Matt Brown here. So, Matt Brown, like I said earlier, man, it sucks when your favorite fighters are on the decline. It hurts to see. Just like it hurt when Chuck was on the decline, it hurts when Matt Brown's on the decline. But since I'm not betting on this fight and I get to just pick like a fanboy, I'm going to say that Matt Brown walks through the fire, he gets in Cowboy's face, he throws the big elbows, he cuts open his eye, and he gets out of there. Vintage Matt Brown performance. The Jake Ellenberger fight never happened, and Matt Brown reigns supreme on Saturday night.
Jed, I kind of think you disagree. Donald Cerrone, Matt Brown, are you going to Cowboy?
I don't disagree in the intent. I think it's great. Like, that's Danny's straight up just making a fanboy pick, and that's cool because who doesn't love, like, Matt Brown is the god of violence, and Valhalla bless us all. He is, man, and that's it. I love Matt Brown, dude. Do not get me wrong. I've had the pleasure of interviewing the man. He is terrifying and a treat. He is like I would love for him to pull out the win here. I'm pretty confidently picking Donald Cerrone. Not that Matt Brown can't win and Matt Brown can make this a tough fight for Donald Cerrone. Like Danny points out, both of them are weak to the body. Like, this is a real thing. To me, I do think Matt Brown is on a noticeable and appreciable decline. And Donald Cerrone, after his most recent loss to Rafael dos Anjos, has made real technical improvements. Like, it's not just the jump to welterweight that has benefited him, although I do think that has helped him. He has made significant technical improvements, and one in particular that I think will serve him well here. He'd been getting it. He'd been developing it before his loss to Dos Anjos, but it has really kind of come into clear. It's become much more clearly used and a better weapon for him. He has a nice intercepting knee. Because the problem for Donald Cerrone has always in general been if you're able to put real pressure on him, he wants to operate in a space that prefers. He's a slow starter in general, and if you can kind of put the screws to him early, can force him to kind of shell up a little bit into a zone he doesn't want to be in. He didn't have the best footwork to kind of mitigate this. He has got much better footwork now. He's doing much better things to counteract this. And like I said, that intercepting knee is a good weapon. He used it effectively against Rick Story. He's been using it effectively for the last little bit now. And when we say, like, it's not a joke when people say that Matt Brown is weak to the body. Both men are. I do sort of envision one of those Matt Brown coming forward because that is what Matt Brown's going to do. And there are two avenues here, really. Either one of those knees catches Matt Brown in the body, kind of folds him up a little bit, and then Donald Cerrone is a really elite level finisher when he's got somebody hurt. So I do not suspect Matt Brown will be able to kind of weather the storm like he did against Jake Ellenberger. Because don't forget, Ellenberger hurt him, and then Matt Brown kind of survived, and then Ellenberger ended up finishing him with another body kick later. I think if Cerrone ever gets that on him, that's game over. More importantly, Donald Cerrone has a really good reactive double. And he's been much more willing to use that. So with Brown coming forward, putting the pressure on him, I suspect Cerrone's improved footwork will either make it more difficult for Brown to kind of get in the wheelhouse that he wants to operate in, or he'll just change levels and take Matt Brown down. And while Matt Brown is a much better grappler than he used to be and a dangerous grappler in a lot of ways, I don't think he's got anything for Donald Cerrone on the ground. I think Cerrone can pretty cleanly move to dominant positions and wrap this one up without too terribly much of effort. Matt Brown is the god of violence. If he can get into a clinch, Donald Cerrone might be in trouble because, there are very few clinches in the sport as good as Matt Brown's. And Matt Brown's clinch is like John Jones has the best clinch game in MMA, followed probably by Demetrius Johnson. But theirs is a different, the clinch game Matt Brown brings is almost entirely a Muay Thai style clinch, which is pretty unique for the sport, honestly. He's going to chop you up with elbows. He's going to hurt you. He's going to hit those foot sweeps and trips. And Donald Cerrone could be in trouble if he gets there. I just don't really see it happening. Cerrone has been a damn near revelation at welterweight. He is probably going to win this, and then he's 1-1 away from a title shot, which is nuts. So it's a great fight. I hope Matt Brown doesn't retire on this loss. If only because the only fight I've wanted for the last 3 years is Matt Brown versus my boy Carlos Condit.
Yes, sir.
And I know Carlos Condit should probably retire, and I feel really bad telling two guys who probably should hang it up. Why don't you have one more fight with another guy who's pure offense and is sure to lose brain cells for both of you? But I'm going to selfishly wish that happens. So I'm picking Donald Cerrone to win. I'm going to say rear naked choke in late first round submission, probably after hurting him, but maybe not. I just think Donald Cerrone's got a lot of edges here, so that's my pick.
Did you see their stare down today?
It did. Matt Brown suddenly just decided he didn't like Donald Cerrone.
Dude, that was awesome.
And Matt Brown does not have kind words for Donald Cerrone, and Donald Cerrone is not going to back down from any man. That's for damn sure.
Those guys to just not give a shit that Matt Brown doesn't like him, and that's a good thing. He's not. I mean, Brown's not going to get in his head, and I don't really need to take that into account. Matt Brown is as tough as they come. We know that. It's super tough to finish him. Of course, to finish him, you probably need to land to the body or choke him out. Look at Jake Ellenberger and look at Damian Maia. What do you know? His last two fights. Donald Cerrone, since moving up to the welterweight division, has looked absolutely fantastic. His combinations are looking better than ever, and his power is increased as kind of expected. He seems smarter. He seems to be not as much of a slow starter. His clinch game, exactly. That's kind of one of his biggest knocks on his game overall at lightweight, and now he has that as well. He's getting in close. He doesn't always need that space. He of course looks better when he has a space when a guy isn't in his face. But this guy is the real deal at welterweight, and is Matt Brown the real deal? Yeah, he's good, but he is on the decline. He's on the way out. His better days are behind him. Matt Brown, if he gets in Cerrone's face, I mean, anything can happen. This is MMA, and wilder things have happened. If Matt Brown gets in his face, elbows Cerrone on the jaw, and finishes him, yeah, I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked out of my mind because Matt Brown is.
Matt Brown is what, Nick?
Yeah, Nick cut out. He's been cutting out on me a little bit. It's just you and me now, Danny. We don't need Nick anymore.
Those Georgia boys holding it down.
That's right. I don't know if you noticed this, but yeah.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, that's what's up. 3.
The ATL.
Over for 3.
I know, right? You think there's a chance we get an event next year, man? Because, I mean, that 201. I mean, Nikita Krylov, is he going to repeat what he did against Ed Herman here against Serkinov? Because, I mean, look, Serkinov, he's in his prime, unlike Ed Herman. And he's a stronger guy, but he's slow as hell.
My great fear is that he won't. But are you back with us, Nick?
I am. I don't know what happened. My my internet wanted to.
You live in Canada. That's what happened.
I mean, this card is in Canada, so I feel like it should be better than usual, but I guess not. As I was saying, Donald Cerrone has been just looking fantastic. Matt Brown, he's on the decline. I think this will be a pretty basic fight. Cerrone is going to dominate Matt Brown unless Matt Brown lands a relatively lucky shot. And I can't call it lucky because Matt Brown, of course, is very dangerous on the feet. Not that we're maybe not expecting him to land. Cerrone has way more ways to win this. He can land to the body and finish him that way with strikes. Of course, followed up by ground and pound possibly. Or he can hurt him, get him to the ground, choke him out, or just not even hurt him and get him to the ground and choke him out. Matt Brown, of course, he got tapped out by Damian Maia, but everybody gets tapped out by Damian Maia. So am I going to go and say, Cerrone's for sure going to dominate him on the ground? No, but I think he's by far the better grappler. Of course, he has way more submissions in the toolbox. Matt Brown, not particularly known for his ground game. So Cerrone, of course, has the advantage there. And at this point, he probably has the advantage on the feet. I don't really see a way Matt Brown can win this fight unless it's more so a flash knockout with elbows in the clinch. And could that happen? Yes. Matt Brown's dangerous, tons of heart, but his better days are behind him. Give me Donald Cerrone here. by finish. I'm torn on whether it's going to be on the ground or on the feet. I will go a TKO. I think he'll land either a knee or a leg kick to the body. And, of course, both guys have weak bodies, as you both mentioned, but I think Matt Brown's is visibly weaker, especially at this point in time. So give me Donald Cerrone by TKO in the second round. Now, next up, we got the main event of the evening, and finally we've reached the end of the program, UFC 206 main event. The headliner, Max Holloway, Anthony Pettis for the interim featherweight championship. Daniel, are you going to go Max Blessed Holloway, or do you think the former lightweight champion, Showtime Pettis, can pull off the upset?
Like I said earlier, man, it's always sad when your favorite fighters are on the decline and they can't pull the trigger like they used to. Because, I mean, when Showtime Pettis was in his prime, I mean, this was a guy that would jump off the fence and head kick you. And he would do all kinds of crazy shit. Nowadays, now that he's not in his prime, when he was in his prime, it was unstoppable. I mean, he kicks Cowboy Cerrone one time and drops him. He jumps off the cage and, hits Benson Henderson. He also taps him out, the Gil Melendez fight. But once he lost to RDA, it's just not the same guy anymore, And now, the crazy moves, they look forced. They used to be spontaneous and, it was like it's Showtime. Now it's like he's trying to be Showtime. And that's not a good thing, especially against a guy like Max Holloway. And, whenever I bet on Showtime, the biggest thing is stop backing up into the fence, man. Like, what the hell? Well, backing into the fence is a terrible idea against Max Holloway, who naturally pushes you into the fence with his footwork, where he's always switching stances and his pressure, and he fights like a long-range fighter. And I say like a long-range fighter because he's only got a 68-inch reach, but he fights like he's got a 75-inch reach. Max Holloway is the future, and he's just a kid. He's, 24 years old or something like that? Wrong place, wrong time for Pettis. He had his time, former WC champ, former UFC champ. He defended the belt. One of my all-time favorite fighters right now is Max Blessed time, and the whole, Max isn't going to push him up against the fence. He's going to strike with him. Yeah, well, Edson Barbosa struck with him too. So, that argument, you can throw that one away. Max Blessed Holloway, I'm not sure if he's going to finish him because there is that chance. Pettis is tough as hell. He's not going to quit, and he's also very durable. But, that durability eventually goes away. Remember when you used to be able to hit Chuck Liddell with everything but the kitchen sink, and then all of a sudden he's getting knocked out by Rich Franklin? That's how it goes with these great fighters, man. And is Pettis at that point yet? He's young in his age, but he's not young in fight years. So we'll see what happens in terms of a finish. But Max Holloway and new interim featherweight champion. Jed, are you going to go with Blessed Holloway here as well? To become the interim featherweight champion, as weird as it sounds, because, one, it took so long for Holloway to fight for a title, and two, this really isn't a title fight. This is a number one contender fight, as we all know. Or do you think Anthony Showtime Pettis, the former UFC 155-pound champion, will find success in this fight and pick up a second belt? Well, supposedly.
I'm picking up a lot of what Danny's saying, and he and I are ultimately going to get to the same location. But we're driving down a different road to get there. I do not believe Anthony Pettis is on the decline, like, at all. I genuinely do not think he is any worse than he is. I think he's exactly the same person he was, and exactly the same fighter, and that the division grew up around him, and more importantly, the division learned how to attack him, and he has never adapted his style around that. For a while, I've thought that kind of the closest corollary to who he is as a fighter is Anderson Silva, in that they both are just predatory offensive dynamos who then, they maybe don't win rounds. Like, people forget Anderson Silva lost lots of rounds in his career, but it didn't matter because he had such dynamic fight-changing offense that really it was just whenever that came into effect, the fight was over. And in a lot of ways, that was Anthony Pettis, for his whole career. Everybody remembers the Showtime kick, and I truly believe the Showtime kick is the best highlight in the history of our sport, and the actual single best sports highlight I've ever seen in my life. I will never forget that. But what people kind of forget about it is he had given up rounds to Benson Henderson, and that fight was a tie going in there, and he was losing the third round basically until he just kind of popped off this absurdly ridiculous offense that won him the fight, and that's been that's the line on him. He was losing to Gilbert Melendez until he ripped him with a savage right hook and then tapped him out. Like he will lose fights for if it goes to decision, he loses fights or ends up in split decisions that he shouldn't. Like he should have beaten Eddie Alvarez. I believe that he beat Eddie Alvarez and was screwed on the cards. But like Danny said, the big thing that has created this narrative, that has made this possible, is his footwork is not good. For an elite fight, he has some of the worst footwork for an elite top shelf fighter. He will get backed into the fence every single time, and that plays really badly against Max Holloway, who has some of the best cage cutting work in the UFC and particularly in the division. I do not want to count out Anthony Pettis because he is still that predatory offensive dynamo. Like if he rips out a savage body kick and folds up Max Holloway, like Max Holloway's super durable, but anybody getting kicked in the liver is going to fall. Like that's just anatomy. And so if he does that and finishes him off, like I will not be surprised. But Max Holloway he's young and really, really good. I genuinely believe he is probably the best featherweight in the world. And I say that even if he rematched Conor McGregor, I think I would pick Max Holloway. It's close, and a fight with him and Aldo is close, but I think I like Max Holloway's game there because he is so – he doesn't have a ton of variety to his game, but what he does is so well-timed, and so he picks the optimal spots to attack and where to attack. And he does fight long. Exactly like Danny says, he fights longer than he is, that's a talent to have. I do not believe he's going to be able to get Anthony Pettis out for all the, I think people may forget a little bit that because we call him Pretty Tony Pettis and he's got the nice chin strap and, he's very coiffed and put together, people might think he's a little bit softer than he is. This dude is rawhide tough. Like, he is tougher than a $2 steak. Rafael Dos Anjos busted his orbital with, like, the third punch of the fight, and he still went 25 minutes with a monster just beating the hell out of him. So I don't think Max Holloway is going to get him out of there. He might double him up on strikes. He might make it look real bad. But Anthony Pettis went full tilt with Edson Barboza, and Edson Barboza is a monster. Like, I don't think Max Holloway can get him out of there. I do think he can win and win pretty clearly, barring something that is supernaturally good. And that's the only difference I see here, is that Max Holloway is not a tremendous athlete in general, and Anthony Pettis is. So, maybe that athleticism is enough to get some type of super offense off, but I think more often than not, Max Holloway is going to back him up and go to work, mixing body head strikes, and take a very clear decision, lopsidedly so.
Dude.
Yeah.
Real quick, you brought up such a good point about how, he was ahead of the curve. He was right here, and then everyone kind of evolved and slowly surpassed him, and he kind of just stayed at that level. That's such a great point here.
He still doesn't box.
Yeah, exactly.
His whole game, as he grew, was like, man, he's got a dynamic kicking offense, and he's an aggressive, opportunistic grappler. And you kind of thought, like, okay, he's going to develop boxing working with Duke Roufus. But he still doesn't really have great boxing. Did he put in any time down with Jackson Winklejohn? Does anyone know?
No, he did
not. I think he did.
And when he did, it was mostly just for the sparring partners.
Yeah, just sparring. I know. Yeah. But yeah, like he just hasn't gotten better, and Max Holloway's done nothing but get better.
Yeah, big time.
Now, I'm not going to say a whole lot about this fight, even though it's the main event and a fantastic matchup, and I can't wait for it to be a 5-rounder as well. You guys said it all, really. Max Holloway is just too good. He at this point, he's young, he's hungry, and he's just too damn good. Anthony Pettis is on the decline. It's kind of weird that he's fighting for a belt, even though he's not really supposed to be, because it's not really a belt and whatnot. It's still going to be weird to hear just the whole idea that he is fighting, has a chance in 2 days to have more UFC gold strapped around his waist just because he did have the skid at lightweight and then didn't look fantastic in his featherweight debut against Charles Oliveira by any means. I mean, he won the fight and choked him out, which was impressive.
He won the fight he was losing, which is the Anthony Pettis story.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Before the RDA fight, well, it was almost impossible to beat Pettis first off, but eventually fighters realized that you take him down, get him in the clinch, and ground him out. But on the feet now, it's not even like he's the best striker anymore. We saw that in the Edson Barboza fight, and that really opened my eyes. I picked Barboza in that fight, but that really opened my eyes still, just seeing it all unfold, because this was the first time on this skid and on this decline that he had lost to a striker. It's not that Barboza took him down and ground him out. He just got outstruck by Edson Barboza. No shame in that because Barboza is a great fighter, but he still got outstruck.
Will outstrike every person he fights in the UFC.
Yeah, but it was Anthony Pettis, and that's an Anthony Pettis that was on the decline already, but we hadn't seen him. And now we know that, well, yeah, he obviously can't get outstruck. And I think it's similar to fight. Max Holloway, of course, smaller than Edson Barboza. But, I mean, Max Holloway, angles, movement, his speed, it's all going to be there. Anthony Pettis super quick, of course. But the weight cut is still concerning. You know, he's working with Lou Giordano and for the full camp this time. So, yeah, I expect the weight cut to not be as bad as it was last time. I know the weight cut was tough last time out. I don't expect it to be easy by any means. Lou Giordano and Pettis can say what they want, but I don't expect it to be easy. And I wouldn't be shocked if he has a few small cardio issues as well. He, of course, gassed out in the Oliveira fight. He's adamant he won't this time around, but it's tough to say. Could he gas out? Maybe. Max Holloway is not going to gas out. That's no problem for him. He's going to outwork Anthony Pettis over the course of 5 rounds. It's going to be a stand-up affair. Max Holloway is not going to take Pettis down. Pettis is obviously not going to take Holloway down. Who's going to land more? Well, that's the winner of the fight, the interim featherweight champion. That's going to be Max. Blessed Holloway. He'll walk away the winner with a decisive decision. I wouldn't be shocked if Pettis gets a round in, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we see a few or at least a couple 50-45 scores. I just think Holloway's going to be able to outwork him, and I'm not so sure Pettis will even walk away with a round. So there you go. Pretty confident in Max Holloway, of course. Pettis always dangerous, but definitely less dangerous, and again, on the decline, so it's going to be a tough fight either way for both guys because Pettis can bring the best out of Holloway, but Holloway will walk away the victor and bring out the best, and more than that in Pettis. So give me Max Holloway here by unanimous decision, pretty clearly, pretty dominantly, and he'll walk away the interim champion. Now, there you go, UFC Fight Night 102.
Real quick, both of you. Aldo versus Holloway, since we've all picked Holloway to win.
Yes.
Just who do you think's winning, Aldo Holloway?
Go ahead.
Holloway.
Holloway all day, baby.
I hate to say it, I think that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, them leg kicks. It's gonna be hard to land those leg kicks on a dude that's constantly switching his stances. And if he decides to go southpaw, forget about it, man. Because I mean, he's gonna be getting those kicks checked, and then he's gonna get his foot broken like he did against the Korean Zombie. He's gonna turn into a wrestler, and that's when Max is gonna turn up on the striking. So I got Max all day. But first things first, we gotta settle business with Pettis this Saturday.
Yeah, Max Holloway will be the real champion by this time 2017, even before this time 2017 next year. And I believe he will be the champion for quite a while. Of course, he will lose eventually. He has lost before, and no one's invincible. Lose. Exactly, but I do believe this guy will be on a dominant run. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy's the champion until even 2020, which is kind of crazy saying it in 2016, but I do think Max Holloway can go on a 3-year title run. I really do.
Let's see it. Let's do it.
I mean,
so there you go. UFC 2. Yeah.
You're forgetting that Duho Troy exists. I'm just saying. Don't count on the boy. No, I'm sorry. Yair Rodriguez is about to lose to BJ Penn.
Featherweight's tight. Max always very good. Yair as well. Duho Choi is awesome. But again, it's really tough, and maybe I'm wrong, but
JD Penn.
we will see. Okay, there you go. UFC 102, or no, UFC Fight Night 102, and UFC 206 in the books. Thanks, Daniel, for coming on. It's great having you back. And Jed, appreciate you coming on before the battle for the first time. Let's move on quickly to DraftKings. Daniel, I know you don't play. Jed, you made a team before we started the show. Give me your teams for 102 and for 206.
Okay, preface this by saying I am not a proficient DraftKings player, but I went with Corey Anderson, Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou, Frankie Perez, Saparbeg Safavarov, and Thiago Tritor for the fight night. Basically, I wanted Anderson, Lewis, and Ngannou on my team because they are all likely to do big things early. Maybe not Anderson, but I expect he'll accrue a lot of points. Frankie Perez, I mostly picked because I think that, I mean, he was cheap. I know nothing about Saparbeg Safarov, as we already established, but he was very cheap as well, and Thiago Tritor was there.
Saparbeg is not as good as his name suggests, just so you know.
I mean, I did not really expect a lot from him, but he was cheap, and I really just wanted the big three guys on my squad. As far as my 206, I've got Olivier Aubin-Mercier, got Duho Troy, Max Holloway, my boy Nikita Krylov, Emil Meek, and Lando Venata. I've got all of those because I expect they're all going to do – like Max Holloway is going to accrue a lot of points beating up Anthony Pettis for 5 rounds. Duho Troy is going to get a violent knockout that's going to be awesome. I think Aubin-Mercier is probably going to get a sub, which will get you some points. If you're not picking Nikita Krylov, you're the worst person, basically. Like I said, I like Emil Meek to kind of take advantage of Jordan Meehan's 2-year layoff. And Lando Venata is groovy as all hell and gets a vote from me every time.
Now, very interestingly, our 206 teams are very, very similar. The only difference is Olivier Aubin-Mercier and Drew Dober. I got Holloway, Venata, Krylov, Meek, Choi, and Dober. So it all comes down to OAM versus Drew Dober, and that's one of the tougher fights on the card. So we will see what happens with that. My Fight Night 102 card or team, not as confident, and we'll see. We got Gerald Mershert, Brian Camozzi, Derek the Black Beast Lewis, Shane Burgos, a debutante who didn't actually discuss here on the program, Andrew Sanchez, and my underdog pick because I got a few favorites in there, including Lewis. I had to go with a cheap guy, and then Sean O'Connell because I think O'Connell is a live dog. I think Corey Anderson beats him, but I think O'Connell, of course, has a puncher's chance and maybe even more. So I put him on my team as one of those guys where we'll see what happens. Maybe he gets a knockout, maybe not. Daniel, I know you don't play DraftKings. Got a few bets up at your website. Without plugging your stuff, we'll do them in a sec. If you want to share your bets, feel free.
Yeah, sure, man. I mean, I already shared them on the show, but 2 units on Kelvin Gastelum, 2 units on Nikita Krylov, and then I did a little parlay, which I don't often do, but when I do, it's situations like this, Max Holloway and Derek Lewis. So I'm thinking I'm going to have a good night. All I need is 2 of them to cash for a good night, and I believe all 3 will, Jed.
Well, your parlay is going to hit. I mean, that's fine.
What about our boy? Don't hate on my boy Krylov now.
Krylov, I wouldn't feel super confident putting money on Krylov, but like I said, I believe he's going to win. But he's the dog in that fight. Never mind, that's fine. Yeah, he's plus money. Absolutely, actually, yeah, Krylov's fine. I forget that he's plus money. You should definitely put plus money on Krylov. That's at least a 50-50 fight.
Yes, sir.
That's more than 50-50 if we're being honest. Something we recently started doing here on Before the Battle about a month ago is picking who we think will win Fight of the Night and Performance of the Night. Now, hopefully you didn't close the Lewis Abdurakhimov blah, blah, blah card. You probably did, but let's quickly go to that again. Unfortunately. I'll go first. My Fight of the Night, let's see. This is a tough one because there really aren't that many good fights. I'm going to go no Fight of the Night. And I'm going to go performances for Lewis, Ngannou, Vellante, and Mark Diakese. And then my
Four performances?
I'll let you guys go. Yes.
Okay.
Usually it's one fight a night to both fighters and 2 performances. But sometimes if there's no good fight, then it's 4 performances. Jed, go ahead if you're ready.
I think Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou are pretty safe bets as far as performance of the nights go. Both are likely to get big, impressive KOs. For fight of the night, ooh.
Good luck.
I mean, oh damn. I'm gonna go Ashley Yoder, Justine Kish. Actually,
Come on.
Really?
why not? Why not?
Because it's not going to win for the night. I would give you $10 if that wins for the night.
I mean, if I'm not putting
You don't
anything
have
up
to give
on my end of it, sure, then cool. I'll take the free action. I mean, it's just there's not anything else that really like maybe Mark Diakise, Frankie Perez, maybe because Diakise is a dynamic guy with offense and Perez maybe hangs in there a little longer, but just like, I might pick Andrew Sanchez, Trevor Smith. That might be a fun little scrap. Like the card's just really not built for a lot of excitement. And John Vellante is a guy that maybe could put forth a thing, but like I said, I didn't do any research for this card, so I have no idea about Saparbek Safarov. I have no idea if he's going to put together a fun fight with John Vellante or if that's going to be a snooze fest. I think if you're just basing off nothing, and I know Justine Kish and Ashley Yoder aren't like the most exciting people, but in general, women's fights are pretty scrappy. So give it to me. Why not?
Fair enough. Daniel, fight night performances real quick.
Yeah. So performance of the night, Gerald Mearshart. He's about to make a statement in his UFC debut. And the other performance of the night is Mark Diakise. He's taking on a dude that retired at age 26. If that doesn't scream head case, I don't know what does. So he's going to get a nice knockout of the performance of the night bonus. I don't think they'll give it to the Black Beast because it's going to be like too easy type thing. But I think fight of the night, surprisingly, is going to be Shane Burgos versus Thiago Trator. And the reason I say that is because the way the styles match up, these two are going to stand and bang till either one guy falls or 3-round war. So for that reason, that's my fight of the night. Should I give you a 206 yet or no?
I'll go quickly for 206. I think my fight of the night, this is tough. Because I think Cerrone Brown has a lot of potential. Swanson Choi, if Swanson hangs in there, has a lot of potential. Mean and Meek, honestly, Krylov, I don't know. Fight of the night, let's go the main event. I think Holloway will definitely outpoint him and outclass him, but I think Pettis will do enough to make it slightly competitive. So I'll say the main event. And then performances, you got to go Dooho Choi. And I hate to give it to Cerrone. I think they probably – no, I'll go Choi and Nikita Krylov. Yeah. Daniel, go ahead.
So fight of the night is going to be Matt Brown versus Donald Cerrone. Look, Matt Brown's not going to go down as easily as everyone thinks he is. He might get dropped, but I think he's going to get back up and make a fight out of it. So that's going to be the fight of the night. I mean, look who's involved. And performance of the night, I mean, you mentioned it. Nikita Krylov, I mean, he's going to knock out Serkinov, get that performance of the night. But the shocker of the night and performance of the night is going to be Kelvin Gastelum when he goes out there and knocks out Tim Kennedy in spectacular fashion and retires him from the sport and gets that performance bonus. So those are my two performance of the night winners and my fight of the night for UFC 206, Nick.
And Jed, you get the final word. Well, almost the final word. Your performances in fight of the night, 206.
Look, if Kelvin Gastelum goes out and KOs Tim Kennedy, he damn sure deserves a performance of the night. I ain't even going to front on that. I am not going with that at all. For performance of the night, it's tough. I think Dooho Choi is a pretty safe bet for one of them because I think he's going to get a cool knockout, and that's usually a thing that wins. For the other one, I feel the Krylov thing, but I am personally going to say Donald Cerrone because I think Matt Brown might be faded enough that Cerrone gets him out of there early, and so that plays for it. As far as fight of the night, I'm going Lando Venata, John Makdessi because I think that has all the makings of a really fun little scrap.
That's actually kind of a not a snoozer, but one I was looking past with all these good fights up top. That actually has a lot of potential to take home fight of the night honors. Yeah.
You don't think Lando's going to get him out of there?
I think he's going to get him out of there, but I think it'll be a little later. I think it might be a really fun little scrap because I like I said, I think Venata's going to end up winning. I like his style a lot, but I do think Makdessi is a little trickier and might make it fun for a little bit.
Got you.
All right, that does it. Episode 54 of Before the Battle in the books. We're just over 2 hours, and I told Jed that we were going to do an hour. So
I still have to write my article for the morning, plus a second article for tomorrow.
Again, I was off by a solid hour, but what can you do? Daniel, again, you're back on Before the Battle. We'll see if you'll be here next week. We'll play that by ear. We have a lot of time to decide that. But Daniel, go ahead, plug your website, plug your bets, plug your Twitter, all your social media, your podcast, anything else you gotta plug.
Well, firstly, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure talking the fights with you, Nick and Jed. Jed, if you need a place to watch 206, you know I'm buying, so hit me up. And for everyone watching, I mean, follow me on Twitter at BestFightPicks. Go to bestfightpicks.com for my plays. My podcast, Half the Battle, is on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. And this week I had the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Kelly, plus the new guy in town, Alex Volkanovski, and the always entertaining, the real OC, Sean O'Connell. Plus, my co-host, Sean Carey, and I, we broke down both of these cards. It was a good time, so make sure you subscribe there. Best Fight Picks on Twitter. And, yeah, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, and Jed, you recently launched a new podcast, so plug that and plug your writing, your social media, anything else you got to say. The floor is yours.
I would like to echo Danny's statements. It was a pleasure to talk with you guys. Sorry I wasn't as prepared as before, but Nick let me know about this about 10 minutes before we started shooting, so that was nice. You can follow me on social. I write for MMAfighting.com. I have freelance work that'll appear occasionally on Bloody Elbow or elsewhere. But every Monday through Friday, you can find me at MMAfighting.com. You can follow my social media. My Twitter is Jed K Meshew, JEDKMESHEW. Follow me on there, and you can keep up with the rest of the things I got going on. I do have a podcast, which is sort of in a transition period because it's going to get, instead of being a personal podcast, we're going to turn it into an MMA fighting podcast. So that's an exciting development that will be happening in the future. So still working on that, but just follow me on Twitter. You can keep up with that. If you have any questions that are longer than 140 characters, Jed Meshew, same name as the Twitter handle, at MMA@gmail.com. Feel free to shoot me on there.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I did. That's my writing Gmail. It's not my personal one. But one final plug, I will be speaking for the next episode of my podcast. We're shooting on Monday or Sunday night. Me and Kareem Zidane, writer for Bloody Elbow, a close personal friend of mine, will be talking all things in the world of MMA and geopolitics. So be on the lookout for that. And thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Now, Jed, as always, appreciate you coming on. It seems like no matter what, we're always doing long podcasts. The Risen one, 6 hours. This one more than.
I'm ready to go for Risen. Anytime.
As I said off the top, I believe it was either off air at the beginning. I don't remember, but it's all combining into one whole thing. But yeah, Risen, I'll be away, but we'll see what happens. At Nick UFC on the Twitter, go hit me up, go follow me. I'll reply. I'll follow you back most likely. No guarantees, but probably. You can find my writing over at bloodyelbow.com. A whole lot of great stuff over there at Bloody Elbow. Interviews out every week. I should have a couple. I'm hoping to have a couple this weekend. No guarantees. I'm not a promise type of guy. No guarantees from me about anything. I'll be doing event coverage for these two cards tomorrow and on Saturday, so be on the lookout for that. That is a guarantee. I signed up for that, so I can't back out of that now. You can check out my other podcast, The MMA Circus. I host it each and every week with Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence. This week, episode 88, that's on Bloody Elbow, by the way. Episode 88, we had UFC heavyweight Adam Milstead, who fights Curtis Blades on the Houston Fight Night card on February 4th. Always great chatting with Adam Milstead. I should have a few interviews up on Bloody Elbow's YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM at the end. So be on the lookout for that, including with a Tough 24 veteran, Jamie Alvarez, as well as a Bellator fighter and a World Series fighter. So, as I said, check that out. Should be up in the next couple of days. I think that's it. Hit me up on Twitter, at UFC. I'll probably follow you. No guarantees. And Jed, appreciate you coming on for the first time. Daniel, glad to have you back. And with that,